Chapter 659. The flying sword light turned from bright to dazzling. On Mount Dibbing in the wind and rain, the blue light that pierced the sky seemed to be the only light between heaven and earth. Li Tianlan raised his head and watched the sword light approach from afar. It was the most poignant and beautiful sword light he had ever seen. It was shining, determined, heartbroken, helpless, but with the last persistence of Mount Dibbing. The sword light was reflected on Wang Yuedong's face. Her beautiful face became clearer and clearer. Crystal tears mixed with the wind and rain. Her eyes were a little desperate, but the sword carried the power that she could not take back. It went straight forward. No one could understand Wang Yuedong's inner feelings at this moment. Summer solstice couldn't, and neither could Li Tianlan. In this world, if one didn't experience many things personally, one wouldn't feel the so-called empathy at all. Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong with tears in his eyes. He looked at her helplessness and persistence. The cold rain was falling. She was desperate. At this moment, Li Tianlan's mind was full of one sentence. If only life was like the first time we met. The poignant and stubborn sword light flew all the way with a madness that was close to despair. Li Tianlan laughed. She was his woman. And the sword fell on his heart at this time. He saw it with his own eyes. It was the most poignant and beautiful sword. But he thought of Dongqing Rushi. In that manner, facing the devil troop and the Beihai Corps, Dongqing Rushi resolutely drew out her sword. How beautiful was the sword light when it was quietly unsheathed. Nostalgia and despair, helplessness and reluctance. They were all beautiful. In the wind and rain, Li Tianlan smiled and straightened his chest, aiming his heart at the sword edge. The blue light fell in front of Li Tianlan like a meteor. The sword light kept spreading out, but it was suppressed and shrank back. The sword edge pierced Li Tianlan's clothes. The tip of the sword was close to Li Tianlan's flesh. But there was no blood. The extremely stable blue light trembled violently. Wang Yuetong bit her lip, and blood flowed down the corner of her mouth. Li Tianlan looked at her, and his smile was extremely calm. "Why don't you hide?" "Hide!" Wang Yuetong cried out. Countless preparations, countless bravery, and all the resoluteness had disappeared in the process of the sword light leaping over. Wang Yuedong's arms trembled. She completely broke down and burst into tears. The tip of the sword gently pressed against the skin on his chest. Li Tianlan's smile was like a mask. "What about you? Why didn't you stab it in? Just a little more." The tip of the sword could pierce Li Tianlan's chest and then penetrate his whole body. But Wang Yuetong stopped. Her sword stopped stiffly in Li Tianlan's chest. Her arms trembled, and the sharp sword light became extremely scattered. Her emotions were like scattered sword lights, and the calmness that she had pretended to be shattered at this moment. She gritted her teeth and cried, "I don't have any strength left." "Then get out of my way," Li Tianlan said quietly. He let Wang Yuedong's sword point at his chest and looked up at the stage of formidable person. It was only a distance of 200 meters. But in the dark of the night, he could still clearly see everyone's expressions. Panic, solemnity, anger, calmness, and hatred. On the quaint and narrow stone platform, the stone of formidable person, carved with hundreds of years of glory of Beihai, stood there, facing the wind and rain, silent and calm. "Go back." Wang Yuetong bit her lip and sobbed in a low voice. Her voice was pleading, "Please, Tianlan." Li Tianlan looked at her quietly. Wang Yuedong's eyes were extremely weak. She used to think that she could be strong, so she did not beg Li Tianlan to go back when they met before. She thought that she could face everything. But at this moment, when the tip of the sword really touched Li Tianlan's skin, the severe pain seemed to completely tear her body apart. Behind her was the stage of formidable person. Dijiang was defeated. The 7 sword-holding families were defeated. She stood in front of Li Tianlan. She was no longer herself. She was the last insistence of the entire Wang family of Beihai. She had to make a move. But she really couldn't. Li Tianlan could not feel Wang Yuedong's emotional collapse. But he could roughly understand her feelings. His smile faded little by little, and his whole person became extremely cold. No. He shook his head and looked into Wang Yuedong's eyes. Get out of the way. Wang Yuetong shook her head desperately, tears splashing out. Do you know why I didn't hide? Li Tianlan said quietly, because I know very well that even if I didn't hide, I wouldn't die. At most, I would be seriously injured. He thought of their first meeting again. You and I shouldn't have met. From the beginning, it was a mistake. No, it's not. Wang Yuedong's figure trembled violently. She held the sword with one hand, unable to put it down or stab forward, while the other hand covered her chest, which was almost out of breath because of the pain. She was very afraid of Li Tianlan like this. He was too calm and too indifferent, as if he was a kind of extreme reason that could abandon everything. Just take it that I let you down. Li Tianlan looked at the sword in front of his chest and said calmly, I'll feel better if you stab me. Please don't say that, okay? Wang Yuedong's body trembled, and her eyes grew dimmer. Li Tianlan was silent for a while. He seemed to want to say a lot more, but he finally fell silent. In the silence, he took a step forward against the sharp tip of the sword. The sword against his chest did not stab in. Wang Yuetong also took a step back. Please don't do this. Tianlan, Wang Yuetong shook her head hard. She had bitten her lips so hard that blood came out, which was shocking. Please. Li Tianlan did not speak. Facing the bright sword edge, his pace was extremely stable, and he kept moving forward without any hesitation. He was moving forward. Wang Yuetong was retreating. The sword edge was always close to Li Tianlan, but it never stabbed in. Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong. Looking at her face full of panic, looking at her bewilderment, looking at her helplessness, looking at her despair, looking at her tears, looking at her giving up her dignity in front of everyone, giving up everything and begging her bitterly. He kept moving forward. Every step he took seemed to step on Wang Yuedong's reserve and pride. The nobility of the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai seemed to become fragmented and humble under his feet. Wang Yuetong never put down her sword. She did not mind being humble in front of Li Tianlan. But if she put down her sword, it meant that the Wang family of Beihai had lost its last persistence. What kind of contradictory scene was this? One moved forward and the other retreated. The two of them walked 100 meters. They were so close, separated by the wind, rain, and sword light. The sword light was shining. The wind and rain were dim. Everything was cold. Li Tianlan's heart twitched fiercely. The woman in front of him was his woman. She held the sword against his chest and kept crying. Every drop of her tears seemed to leave wounds in his heart. There was a flash of anger in his eyes. As he moved forward, he suddenly looked up and stared at every figure on the stage, a formidable person. Can the dignified Wang family of Beihai only send one woman at this critical moment? His voice was like a surging tsunami or a thunder sweeping through the sky, majestically suppressing everything. Who dares to fight with me? Come out. Does the Wang family of Beihai, who only knows how to hide behind a woman, deserve to be called the first family in the dark world? Bullshit. His eyes were extremely arrogant. His voice was extremely contemptuous. All the humiliation fell on the heads of all the people of the Wang family of Beihai after they lost the barrier. Bastard. In the furious voice, a burly figure on the edge of Mount Dibing suddenly rushed toward Li Tianlan. Strong electric light burst out from him. Wang family of Beihai, code name Tide. The burly figure strode forward faster and faster. I'll kill you. Li Tianlan's eyes became extremely cold in an instant. The ghastly killing intent suddenly spread out with sword intent. At this moment, Li Tianlan's expression was still calm. But during the hundreds of meters of advance and retreat, every drop of Wang Yuedong's tears was like the hottest oil, constantly pouring on the fire in his heart. Such a Beihai province. Such a Wang family of Beihai. There was the invincible sword emperor here. He was talented and bold. He was amazing. There was the calm and open-minded Heaven Saber DK, who was calm and indifferent. He also appreciated Dejiang's bravery and loyalty from the bottom of his heart. The Wang family of Beihai was too big. There were a lot of people he liked here. There were also a lot of people he didn't like. When the enemy was in front of them, the huge Wang family of Beihai actually put all its persistence on a young woman. They hit on the stage of formidable person. They stood behind Wang Yuetong. It was quiet. Li Tianlan looked at the crowd in the dark. Why did he take it for granted? He raised his palm indifferently. The wind and rain rolled all over the sky, and the endless rain seemed to connect into a line in an instant. The sword light shone in the rain. Li Tianlan waved his palm. The rain with sword energy suddenly appeared in front of Tide. The soft rain cut the tears, went all the way down, and cut his body in an instant. Blood burst out all over the sky. Li Tianlan strode forward faster and faster. Wang Yuetong kept retreating, and her hand holding the long sword kept shaking. Who else wants to die? Li Tianlan's voice was calm, but there was a touch of extreme sharpness. No one spoke. At this moment, everyone could feel Li Tianlan's undisguised killing intent. The young Dong Huang seemed to be completely enraged by Wang Yuetong's embarrassment. At this moment, whoever dared to step forward would almost end up like Tide. Don't kill anymore. Why are you doing this? Wang Yuetong cried louder. Li Tianlan looked at her deeply. He could see her embarrassment and struggle. The people of the Wang family of Beihai could also see it. But no one spoke on the silent stage of formidable person. Li Tianlan laughed. At this moment, Wang Yuetong carried all the persistence of the Wang family of Beihai, the last persistence. There must be an explanation for such persistence. The Wang family of Beihai could not give such an explanation. But Li Tianlan could. Everything that happened today. Li Tianlan looked into Wang Yuetong's eyes. I'm sorry. But at the same time, the Wang family of Beihai is sorry. He looked at the stage of formidable person getting closer and closer. He fought through Beihai and passed by one city after another for this goal. He had come here. No one could stop him from moving forward. Not Wang Yuetong. Not Lin Fengting. Not either. Li Tianlan reached out his hand. He reached out his hand to Wang Yuetong. The bright and slender sword still stood in front of them. The long sword was very long. He seemed to want to touch Wang Yuetong's face. But the long sword that represented too many things separated them from each other. His palm was always a little bit away from Wang Yuetong's face. Li Tianlan smiled and said softly, I'll give you the explanation you want to give to Beihai. He suddenly clenched his palm. The sharp sword energy suddenly scattered and then gathered quickly. A wild wind blew under the heavy rain. The wind with sword energy blew the space, and the whole world seemed to be compressed. The heavy but not sharp sword energy controlled Wang Yuetong's body in an instant. Wang Yuetong opened her eyes wide in horror and screamed, No! The sword energy fell on her and on her hand. The invisible sword energy pushed her forward with an irresistible force. Only one step. Swoosh! With a dull sound, the bright sword blade pierced into Li Tianlan's chest and came out from his back. Wang Yuetong's eyes turned red in an instant. She loosened her grip on the sword, and her body trembled. Li Tianlan's palm touched Wang Yuetong's face. It was so soft and gentle. Wang Yuetong looked at him with dull eyes. At this moment, it seemed that everything had lost its meaning. Li Tianlan, whose mouth was bleeding, looked at the sword blade trembling slightly in his chest and narrowed his eyes. At that moment, he forcibly controlled Wang Yuetong's body and the sword in her hand. He voluntarily let Wang Yuetong pierce his body with the sword. Maybe it was only a centimeter away, and the sword would have pierced his heart. This feeling, he laughed. It hurts. A dense white mist slowly appeared around him. The last trace of worry in Li Tianlan's eyes completely disappeared. He looked at the stage a formidable person, his eyes full of indifference and firmness. His body tensed up slightly, and in front of everyone's eyes, his arms suddenly shook. Crack. With a clear cracking sound, the long sword in Li Tianlan's chest suddenly broke. The broken long sword fell at Li Tianlan's feet, and the sword blade that came out from his back flew out. Li Tianlan spat out a mouthful of blood. More blood flowed from his chest. Tianlan. The dull Wang Yuetong finally came to her senses and rushed to Li Tianlan, but she did not dare to touch him. In a very short time, the blood flowing out of Li Tianlan's chest had slowed down a lot. The sword wound was still badly mutilated and could not heal for the time being. But Li Tianlan's breath, which had suddenly weakened for a moment, became stable again. Tianlan, Wang Yuetong's voice was chaotic and crazy. Li Tianlan took her palm and pulled her body over. He reached out and lifted her face. Looking at the dazed, chaotic and a little crazy eyes, he ordered, "Close your eyes." Wang Yuetong's long eyelashes gently trembled in the wind and rain, but she tried to keep her eyes open. Li Tianlan lowered his head and kissed her slowly but firmly in everyone's sight. Chapter 660. The corners of Wang Yuetong's lips were soft and slightly cool. There was a smell of blood in the fragrance, like rose petals stained with blood. The wind and rain raged on Mount Dibbing. Wang Yuetong opened her eyes wide, watching Li Tianlan hold her in his arms and hold her waist. His palms were constantly exerting force, hot and warm. Feeling each other's breath, Wang Yuetong's long eyelashes fluttered. Finally, she closed her eyes and put her hands around Li Tianlan's neck. Strong wind, heavy rain, night. Blood and ruins. The solemn crowd. The world was like a background full of darkness and depression. The young man and woman who had each other held each other tightly, completely forgetting themselves. In the flashing lightning, this was destined to be a scene that everyone would remember for a lifetime. It was like attachment, but also like parting. Wang Yuetong closed her eyes, grabbed Li Tianlan, and bit his lips hard. Her tears seemed to have run out. Her body became extremely cold. The blood on Li Tianlan's chest was still flowing, falling on her body, which was shocking. That sword strike was her explanation to Beihai. It was also Li Tianlan's explanation to her. The slowly flowing blood gradually solidified. Wang Yuetong held Li Tianlan tightly, as if she wanted to engrave his breath into her blood. Li Tianlan slowly let go of her, looked at her face, and did not speak for a long time. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red because of crying. Her spirit was getting more and more haggard. The sobbing not long ago seemed to have completely calmed down. Her bloodshot eyes were empty and deathly still, as quiet as a grave. She looked at Li Tianlan quietly, reached out her hand gently, and smiled. Tianlan, Wang Yuetong's voice was soft and extremely steady. Her emotions seemed to have calmed down, or she had no emotions at all. Her slender fingers gently touched the wound on her chest. Wang Yuetong's smile was pale and desperate. This is not my explanation to the Wang family of Beihai, at least not all of it. Her voice grew quieter and quieter, but a faintly discernible light began to radiate from her eyes. It was extremely stubborn and unyielding. Li Tianlan's heart gradually sank, but he did not say anything. Actually, I don't need to explain to the Wang family of Beihai. Do you understand? I'm a part of this place. Standing here is my duty, my responsibility. It's an innate responsibility that I can't escape from. I've lived here since I was young. This is my home. You are my enemy. If I don't stand in front of you, then I owe you. I can't repay such a debt. Li Tianlan looked at her quietly. He saw the light in her eyes become firm and clear. It was a choice. Unshakable and decisive. Actually, you don't owe me anything. In any case, I don't think you owe me anything. No matter what you think, you've already paid me back for that sword attack. I respect your choice. She slowly retreated. The palm stained with Li Tianlan's blood opened. The broken sword reappeared in his hand. The distance between the two grew further and further. She stared at Li Tianlan seriously. You can do whatever you want. You can destroy Mount Dibbing, but before that, you must destroy me first. Because I'm the daughter of the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and watched Wang Yuetong retreat further and further. At this moment, in the tragic and almost cruel situation, she finally made her choice. Between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai, she chose the Wang family of Beihai. Just like many times before, she chose Li Tianlan between the Wang family of Beihai and Li Tianlan. At any time, she had her own insistence. Li Tianlan's reaction was very calm. There was no sadness or hesitation. You should remember one thing. You're not only the daughter of the Wang family of Beihai, but also my woman. Li Tianlan looked at her and said in a calm but irresistible voice, You're my woman, so you should listen to me. Wang Yuetong was still retreating. She shook her head and wanted to say, I'm not your woman anymore. But Li Tianlan didn't give her a chance. He looked over Wang Yuetong at the stage of formidable person, which was close behind her, and reached out his hand. You respect my choice, and I respect yours. He said expressionlessly, so now you have to be obedient. Wang Yuetong's figure suddenly shook. There was nothing behind her, but in an instant, a vortex formed by extremely twisted air directly surrounded her. The twisted space kept shaking, and finally formed a vortex with a radius of about 10 meters. The vortex rotated slowly, trapping Wang Yuetong in it. Wang Yuetong, whose face changed dramatically, suddenly realized something. She raised the broken sword in her hand without hesitation, and the dazzling lightning instantly covered the entire vortex. The vortex was still rotating slowly. The lightning driven by Wang Yuetong disappeared in an instant. A trace of panic flashed in Wang Yuetong's eyes. The sword energy condensed on the blade of the broken sword, and she stabbed straight ahead. The slowly rotating vortex was extremely real, but also extremely illusory. The blade stabbed into the vortex, but it drove Wang Yuetong's body to rotate. The condensed and twisted vortex was completely unbreakable for her. Confinement. Li Tianlan's figure passed by Wang Yuetong and walked toward the stage of formidable person. Let me out. Tianlan, let me out, let me out. Wang Yuetong's crisp voice sounded extremely sharp because of her excessive impatience. Li Tianlan ignored her and didn't look back. Let me out. You can't do this to me. I'm not your woman. I'm not anymore. The wind and rain raged. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. In the storm, Li Tianlan stepped on the steps of Zhuanyuantai. The ancient steps went all the way up with a subtle slope. At the end was the stone of formidable person. Are you sure you want to do this? Summer Solstice's voice floated down quietly. The Wang family of Beihai owes a lot of people an explanation. Li Tianlan took the second step. I'll take it today. Go back. This is not an enemy you are qualified to face. In the furious roar, countless figures rushed out of the ruins behind Li Tianlan. Wang Donghu, Li Tianlan, Deputy Minister of Beihai Internal Defense Force, come and fight with me. Come on. Wang Huatu, Field Division Commander of Beihai Corps, get down here, and I'll spare your life. Little bastard of the Li family, your father is here. Get down here and kowtow. Heavenly son of a bitch. F***CKU, come and fight with me for 300 rounds. Groups after groups of figures appeared. A large number of figures rushed and charged in the night rain. The ruins of Mount Dibbing kept shaking. The dazzling lights suddenly lit up on Mount Dibbing. More and more people rushed to the stage of formidable person. Insults, provocations, and all kinds of ugly words filled everyone's ears in an instant. The first group of people who rushed over cursed and rushed to the stage of formidable person without hesitation. More and more people were still rushing over. Summer Solstice's face suddenly changed and became extremely ugly. Dijiang transferred all the people in Mount Dibbing away. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. She also acquiesced. Therefore, in the current Mount Dibbing, except for Dijiang, Wang Yuetong, and the 6 devils lying in ambush on Mount Dibbing, there was no other power. And now this group of people came from the foot of the mountain. In other words, they came from the troops that had gone to Kanglan and the floating island. No one thought that so many people would turn around and come back in the middle of the journey. But everyone could understand that by standing here, they not only violated the order of the Wang family of Beihai, but also the military order of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State. Military orders must be obeyed. Tianlan. No. Wang Yuetong kept hitting the whirlpool around her. Her voice was a little frightened. Her sharp voice was instantly suppressed by a lot of insults. On the stage of Formidable Person, Li Tianlan turned around and looked at the surging crowd. High-level officers, middle-level officers, and grassroots elites were densely packed. The Deputy Minister of the Internal Defense Force of Beihai, who rushed to the stage of Formidable Person first, was less than 50 meters away from Li Tianlan. This middle-aged man, who looked to be nearly 50 years old, was shining with lightning. His body was burly and majestic. He roared and kept charging, defending the most sacred place on Mount Dibbing. His eyes were full of determination. Countless people followed behind him. Charging forward. Charging forward. Regardless of everything. Without hesitation. This could be said to be a heroic charge. It was fanatical, heroic, and could even be said to be worthy of praise and tears. Li Tianlan looked at them. His expression was as calm as a mask. "You all want to die," he said in a calm voice. It was not a question, but an affirmative sentence. Before his voice died away, Wang Donghu, the Deputy Minister of the Internal Defense Force of Beihai, who rushed to the front, had directly rushed over. With all the strength in his body, he roared and smashed directly at Li Tianlan. Bang! The hard fist slammed into Li Tianlan's palm. Li Tianlan's body lit up. It was incomparably illusory and real. The soaring sword light illuminated the stage of Formidable Person. The gushing blood suddenly burst out under the shining sword light, like a smashed watermelon. The red juice kept flying against the wind and rain, and the white broken bones were spread on the stage of Formidable Person. Wang Donghu's body disappeared. The blood and broken flesh on the ground were the last traces of his existence. There was no hesitation or hesitation. Decisive, indifferent, and vicious. Li Tianlan just stood there, facing the charging crowd in endless anger. The surging sword light was getting brighter and brighter. The sword light suppressed the lightning and the flame, becoming the only light on Mount Dibbing. Bang! Another high-level member of the Wang family of Beihai exploded in front of Li Tianlan. Countless figures rushed forward in an endless stream. Everyone seemed to be completely crazy. With red eyes, gritted teeth, and ferocious expressions, they rushed over with their most powerful attacks. No one thought about life and death anymore. The only thought in everyone's mind was to attack. Even if they died, they would make their attacks fall on Li Tianlan. Kill. 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 Kill him. Tear him apart. The experts of the Wang family of Beihai at the front exploded one after another. A steady stream of elites rushed up from the back like crazy demons, completely in a state of desperate charge. Go back. All of you go back. Don't kill anymore, Tianlan, I beg you, don't kill anymore. Summer Solstice's stern voice and Wang Yuedong's desperate voice echoed in the fanatical roar, shattering the wind and rain. The charging crowd did not waver. Rush forward. Attack. Death. Madness. Because this was the stage of Formidable Person. It was the holy land that their ancestors had guarded for hundreds of years. No one could desecrate this place. Li Tianlan was an enemy. He stood on the stage of Formidable Person, so he was a mortal enemy. Kill him. Bite him to death. Tear him to pieces. In the earth-shaking roar, Li Tianlan was indifferent like a machine born for killing. The roar in front of him, which was powerful enough to shake the soul, did not make him waver or fear. A large number of crazy people rushed to his current position at the risk of their lives, which added a touch of unparalleled fierceness to his heart. None of you are afraid of death. Then all of you should die. The narrow stage of formidable persons suddenly lit up with a sword light that almost filled the entire passageway. The majestic sword light surged like a tide, stirring crazily. Countless people rushed up and died in the sword light. More and more people rushed forward. They died in the sword light again. Continue to rush. Kill again. Kill again. Kill again. At this moment, there was only death in front of Li Tianlan. High morale, a heroic charge, and a brave death. If you want to die, then go to hell. Tonight, Li Tianlan completely showed his most ruthless side. Blood and broken bones were all over the passageway of the Shenyuan platform, washed down by the rain. Blood flowed like a river. If a human stood in his way, he would kill a ghost. Countless elites of the Wang family of Beihai rushed up and died in the sword light. From beginning to end, Li Tianlan stood in his position, motionless. The sword light illuminated his whole body, making him extremely dazzling in the dark night. His face was full of chilling indifference, without a trace of hesitation. Tianlan. I beg you, don't kill anymore, I beg you. Wang Yuetong, who was trapped in the vortex, suddenly knelt down and kowtowed to Li Tianlan. Countless blood and corpses were enough to make people despair. Wang Yuetong's forehead touched the ground hard, and her mind was blank. The killing continued, and it became more and more crazy. There was no pity in Li Tianlan's eyes. Instead, there was a touch of chilling anger, and he was extremely majestic. For the first time, he took a step down. The sword light suddenly became louder, and there seemed to be countless sword energy whistling between heaven and earth, as if it was about to destroy the entire stage of formidable person. Li Tianlan. Wang Yuetong stood up abruptly and screamed in despair. Her voice was sharp and pained, and it was filled with shocking hatred. For the first time, the sword light lit up in the cage-like vortex. Wang Yuetong raised her palm. The next second, Li Tianlan, Summer Solstice, and Lin Fengting. Everyone's face suddenly changed. The sword light on the stage of formidable person disappeared in an instant. Li Tianlan's figure violently knocked away the charging crowd. The sword formation of 13-story buildings immediately appeared beside Wang Yuetong. In a split second. It was a close call. The sword light in Wang Yuetong's hand gave off an extremely desperate light. There was no hesitation. Swish. In a slight but earth-shaking sound, Wang Yuetong stabbed her own heart with the sword. Countless streams of sword qi exploded. Summer Solstice and Lin Fengting rushed down. Everyone on the stage of formidable person rushed down. The 13-story building surrounded the vortex, stirring everything into a blur. Countless airwaves spread out and finally subsided. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. The vortex disappeared. The 13-story building slowly rotated around Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong. In the center of the sword formation, Li Tianlan directly grasped the blade of the broken sword. But it was still half a second too late. The blade had already pierced into Wang Yuetong's chest and came out from her back. In the dead silence, Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan quietly. She looked at Li Tianlan's palm and asked weakly, "Does it hurt?" Blood flowed down Li Tianlan's palm. He held the blade with a twisted face. Looking at Wang Yuetong, he couldn't say a word for a while. Wang Yuetong's figure swayed slightly and then she fell backward. Li Tianlan held her in his arms. The extremely gentle sword energy immediately sealed her wound. "How is Yuetong?" Li Tianlan. "How is Yuetong?" Summer Solstice's voice was almost screaming. "If anything happens to Yuetong, get out of here." Li Tianlan suddenly roared in rage. The sword formation of the 13-story building suddenly shook. The vast sword energy almost fell from the end of the sky. The few swords left in the 13-story buildings shone at the same time. The sword energy was dense and extremely fierce. Wang Yuetong lay quietly in Li Tianlan's arms. She opened her eyes and looked at the rainy sky, lost in thought. "I'm sorry," Li Tianlan looked down at her face. After a long time, he said in a very hoarse voice. Wang Yuetong did not respond. She could not stop Li Tianlan. Nor could she stop Mount Dibbing. She could only choose to kill herself. She didn't want to see it. She didn't want to see it. She didn't want to experience anything. How nice would it be to leave like this and never look back? Li Tianlan's body trembled slightly. In silence, his eyes turned red. Wang Yuetong aimed the sword directly at his heart. At this moment, he was extremely grateful to Dijiang. If Dijiang hadn't stimulated his dual wind and thunder veins and greatly increased his speed, the blade might have really penetrated Wang Yuetong's heart at that moment. He appeared in front of Wang Yuetong and didn't stop the sword. But at the most dangerous moment, he grasped the blade and finally made the blade deviate by an inch. Wang Yuetong's blade didn't pierce her heart, but the blade went through her chest. The huge sword energy caused unimaginable damage to her body in an instant. What would the final result be? Li Tianlan was not sure at all. Wang Yuetong moved laboriously and looked at Li Tianlan. "You're crying." She reached out and touched Li Tianlan's face. It was very gentle, but extremely weak. "Don't talk. Don't talk. I'm here. I'm here." Li Tianlan repeated incoherently, holding Wang Yuetong's hand tighter and tighter. Wang Yuetong coughed up a mouthful of blood, and her eyes gradually dimmed. "I can't guard Beihai, and I lost you. Tianlan, I'm so tired, it's okay." Li Tianlan said quickly, "It's okay. Don't close your eyes. Do you hear me? Don't close your eyes." Wang Yuetong smiled laboriously. The Wang family of Beihai. Dongqing Rushi. I'll pay for it with my life, and give you an explanation. Stop it. Look at me, Yuetong, look at me. Wang Yuetong tried to open her dim eyes and looked at Li Tianlan. In her sight, the man who was unforgettable to her was getting more and more blurry. Before her consciousness fell into the boundless darkness, her heart was filled with reluctance. Her eyes closed, little by little, slowly. "Let us in. I can save her. Li Tianlan, let me in." Summer Solstice's voice, which became a little distorted because of her eagerness, suddenly sounded. "I have half of immortality. I can save her." Li Tianlan seemed to wake up from a dream and waved his hands suddenly. The sword formation of the 13-story building was completely dispersed. Summer Solstice staggered to Wang Yuetong's side. Without hesitation, she crushed a pendant on her body and poured a small amount of liquid into Wang Yuetong's mouth. She touched Wang Yuetong's heartbeat. Wang Yuetong's heartbeat was extremely weak under the serious and fatal injury. Summer Solstice suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. The mistress of the Wang family of Beihai, who had been carefree for most of her life, grabbed her daughter's hand and burst into tears. "I'm going to take her away." Feeling Wang Yuetong's gradually stabilizing but extremely weak breath, Li Tianlan looked at Summer Solstice and said word by word, "I'll kill anyone who dares to stop me. Tianlan, she's more suitable to stay in Mount Dibbing now." Lin Fengting came over and glanced at Wang Yuetong with a somewhat complicated look in his eyes. "Here." Li Tianlan sneered. "I don't trust this place. Are all the people of the Wang family of Beihai dead? Why do you want to make things difficult for a woman? She took the initiative to wait for you here." Summer Solstice shook her head. "I didn't expect her to do this. You can imagine how disappointed she is in you." Li Tianlan's heart suddenly twitched. He said coldly, "Isn't she disappointed in you?" Summer Solstice was silent for a long time. She looked at Wang Yuetong, who was in a coma, with gentle eyes and whispered, "Give her to me. If you want to go to the stage of formidable person, go ahead." "Impossible," Li Tianlan said without hesitation. Although her injury has been stabilized by the eternal life technique, she really shouldn't move much. "Tianlan, this is Yuedong's home after all. Where can you take her? The situation in Tiannan is chaotic. Emperor Dong's palace has just gained a firm foothold. But this is Mount Dibbing after all. She's safer here than anywhere else." Lin Fengting said slowly, "Of course, after she wakes up, if she still wants to go to you, I'll be responsible for sending her there. From now on, Beihai won't ask her to do anything." He looked at Li Tianlan. His voice was very soft but extremely tough. Such toughness was naturally directed at Summer Solstice. Summer Solstice glanced at Lin Fengting and said nothing, as if she acquiesced to this result. Li Tianlan did not speak. "What? You don't trust me? Or you don't trust the Wang family of Beihai? If it's the latter, I'll live here during this period." "You should be relieved, right?" Lin Fengting said. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and loosened his grip on Wang Yuetong little by little. He looked down at Wang Yuetong. Wang Yuetong closed her eyes and breathed weakly. There was no trace of blood on her face. He suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. Summer Solstice took Wang Yuetong carefully. "After what happened, I hope both of you can calm down and have a good talk." Lin Fengting said, "Tianlan, Beihai is very sincere. They can give you the explanation you want. It's absolutely satisfactory. How about it?" Li Tianlan glanced at Summer Solstice. Summer Solstice held Wang Yuetong and was silent for a long time. Then she said with difficulty, "During this period, I'll personally go to Zhongyuan province to visit Minister Dongcheng." At this moment, there were corpses and blood everywhere on Mount Dibbing. Li Tianlan was under the stage of formidable person, overlooking the entire Mount Dibbing. He heard Summer Solstice's words. It seemed that he didn't want to delay Wang Yuetong's recuperation too much. After a moment of silence, he nodded expressionlessly. Summer Solstice smiled bitterly, feeling complicated. This moment was so humiliating for the entire Beihai. Li Tianlan was here. No matter what the result of the subsequent negotiations was, for them, it was a real alliance under the city. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 661. In the messy and hurried footsteps, Tang Shi and Song Ci, two young women who were likely to be the most influential in the Wang family of Beihai in the future, finally broke free from the crowd and rushed over. Wang Yuetong, who was in a coma, was so quiet that it was almost unreal. Even though her consciousness was immersed in the darkness, her eyebrows were still frowning. She looked a little haggard, helpless, and pitiful, which made people feel sorry for her. More and more people came over and looked at the scene with complicated expressions. How much despair and pain did Wang Yuetong have to feel in the vortex of the cage made of pure power for her to stab her heart without hesitation? Summer Solstice held Wang Yuetong in his arms. Li Tianlan held her hand. The killing intent and sword light that filled the sky had already disappeared, but the atmosphere in the field had become even more oppressive. "Are you satisfied now?" Song Ci's voice suddenly sounded in the silence. She stared at Li Tianlan, gritted her teeth, and said word by word, "In order to show your so-called majesty and declare your invincibility to the world, Yuetong almost died here. You destroyed Mount Dibbing and your own woman. Are you satisfied with this result?" Li Tianlan, "Your Highness?" Silence. Among the core members of the Wang family of Beihai who were gradually approaching, someone reached out and pulled Song Ci. Song Ci did not speak. She just looked at Li Tianlan with a cold smile. Li Tianlan finally raised his head slowly. He held Wang Yuedong's hand without any expression on his face. "Do you want to die?" He looked at Song Ci and asked in a cold voice. "If you want to kill me, no one here can stop you." I don't want to die, but that doesn't mean I have to endure what I want to say. Song Si sneered and looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. I want to ask you now, are you satisfied? Indeed, you don't have to hold it in, but that's all you can say. Li Tianlan nodded. What were you doing when Dijiang was defeated? What were you doing when Yutong attacked? He pointed at the stage of formidable person in front of him. You are all hiding behind that rock, and now you ask me if I am satisfied? I'm not satisfied. I'll only be satisfied when people like you are dead. Song Si's face turned red. She wanted to say something but hesitated. There was very little shame in her eyes, only a touch of helplessness, not knowing whether it was sadness or joy. Tianlan. Lin Fengting said calmly, she's pregnant. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. Song Si was stunned and looked at Lin Fengting. How did you know? Song Si was pregnant when she was with Wang Xingxiao before the final maneuver of the two academies, but she didn't find out at that time. In the final maneuver, she was also seriously injured by Li Tianlan. Since then, her body had been a little weak, and she had been recuperating recently. Otherwise, given her character, she would have stood in front of Li Tianlan even if she knew she would die. The problem was that only Wang Xingxiao, Summer Solstice, and Wang Tianzong knew about it. How did Lin Fengting know? Lin Fengting didn't answer the question and just sighed softly. Song Si's talent and strength were both extremely good, but because she was pregnant, her injuries had yet to heal, so she could not fight. Wang Xingxiao's real fiancé, Tang Shi, did not know martial arts. Wang Xingxiao was still in Eastern Europe. Dijiang was defeated by Li Tianlan. It was not that there were no other young talents in Beihai province, but Li Tianlan had fought all the way through Beihai. How many of them could stand here? In the end, Wang Yuetong was the only one standing in front of Li Tianlan. As for the older generation, Lin Fengting looked at the crowd around him and smiled with some mockery. He was very disappointed with such a Beihai, and he believed that Li Tianlan was the same. When Li Tianlan walked up Mount Dibbing, it was Dijiang who stood in front of him. Dijiang's surname was not Wang. When Li Tianlan was about to set foot on Xianyuan stage, it was Wang Yuetong who stood in front of him. She was alone. On the stage of formidable person, there was a river of blood and countless corpses, but none of them belonged to the important figures of the Wang family of Beihai. Such a Beihai. In particular, Wang Yuetong's injury at this time would only make Li Tianlan more angry at such a Beihai. But Wang Yuetong's injury also made Li Tianlan really calm down. At least this was the result that Lin Fengting hoped to see. All right. Summer Solstice's voice suddenly sounded. I'll find a place to settle Yuetong. There are some things that we can talk about when I come back. Li Tianlan was expressionless and said nothing. Summer Solstice turned around and left without looking at Li Tianlan. The moment those soft and slender hands left Li Tianlan's, he subconsciously wanted to, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. He held tightly, but finally let go. Wang Yuetong's palms were soft and delicate, but extremely cold. He watched Summer Solstice's back disappear into the night and wind and rain, remaining silent for a long time. You're sorry for her. You owe her. Song Si said word by word. You're right. Li Tianlan said blandly, I owe her, but Beihai also owes her. Song Si seemed to want to say more. But Li Tianlan had lost all his patience. He raised his palms. The surrounding space suddenly trembled for a moment. A huge whirlpool spun rapidly, pushing Song Si and all the people around her out. Li Tianlan quietly looked at the direction where Summer Solstice's figure disappeared and said nothing. Lin Fengting stood beside Li Tianlan and said nothing. Will she forgive me? Li Tianlan suddenly asked in a low voice. Lin Fengting sat down beside Li Tianlan. After a moment of silence, he said softly, in fact, you know that she didn't blame you at all. It depends on whether you can forgive yourself. Li Tianlan lowered his head and did not speak for a long time. He was thinking about Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong. The two figures kept alternating in his mind. In silence, the muscles on his face kept trembling. I don't know if I did something wrong. His voice was a little hoarse. The sword light that pierced his chest was decisive and unyielding. The figure lying on the hospital bed was silent and pale. In the wind and rain, Li Tianlan sat on the ground, a little painful and a little lonely. I feel sorry for her. Lin Fengting sighed and patted Li Tianlan's shoulder without saying anything. Li Tianlan quietly looked at Mount Dibing. From Qiushui to Shenzhou. From south to north. He fought through the entire Beihai province and the 7 sword-holding families. Mount Dibing was already in ruins. Now the stage of formidable person was right in front of him, and no one could stop him. But somehow, Li Tianlan was a little dispirited and even depressed. I'm disappointed in such a Beihai, he said softly. After a pause, he continued, no, such a Beihai is good. But I'm disappointed in such a Wang family. In such a Beihai, there was Dijiang who tried his best to stop him, the sword-holding families who did not change their original intentions, Tangshi and Song Ci, Wang Yuetong, Huangfu Qiushui, Summer Solstice, and countless people who were willing to die for the stage of formidable person. Countless of them were guarding this holy land. But the core figures of the Wang family of Beihai who should guard here the most didn't even speak since he came here, let alone say anything. He was extremely disappointed with such silence. Big trees have dead branches. Lin Fengting was silent for a while. He thought of everything Li Tianlan saw along the way on Mount Dibing. Among the core figures of the Wang family of Beihai, there were people who dared to stand up. But when countless people wanted to stand up, there were also many people who pulled them forward. That was an extremely subtle entanglement. Some people wanted to enter. Some people wanted to retreat. Some people wanted to be heroes. Some people were cowards. After all, this was no longer the Wang family of Beihai that was now recorded in the history of Zhongzhou state. I'm also disappointed in such a Wang family. Lin Fengting chuckled. I think Tianzong will be even more disappointed. He can't absolve himself from the blame for the Wang family's current situation. What's there to be disappointed about? Li Tianlan said coldly. These are related to him, but not the main ones. Lin Fengting said calmly, any force will encounter such problems, and in the face of such problems, the Wang family of Beihai is extremely experienced. Let's wait and see. When Tianzong gets his injury under control, it's time for the Wang family of Beihai to start. Start what? Wang Tianzong asked. Start reshuffling. Lin Fengting said blandly, such things have happened many times in the history of the Wang family of Beihai. They either rise from the ashes or begin to decline. Li Tianlan thought quietly for more than 10 minutes before saying, Yuetong shouldn't stay in Beihai. I'll take her away. If she wants to, I have no problem with that. Summer Solstice's voice sounded not far away. The vortex of power around Li Tianlan and Lin Fengting was still spinning. Summer Solstice's expression was a little, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Haggard and pale. She stretched out her hand and waved. She walked in from outside the vortex quietly. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. If she wants to go to Tiannan, I won't stop her. Summer Solstice looked at Li Tianlan and was silent for a while. Then she said, now we should have a good talk. Li Tianlan looked at Summer Solstice and twitched the corner of his mouth. The messy wind and rain were still going on. All the core members of the Wang family of Beihai were isolated outside the vortex of power. In the blurry scene, people could only see Summer Solstice talking to Li Tianlan seriously. Different people had different moods. Some people felt humiliated. Some people felt lucky. That was the Wang family today. The night was getting darker. Darkness. Dawn. 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 The wind and rain were still going on. After talking all night, Li Tianlan slowly stood up. The vortex that lasted all night disappeared. In the messy wind and rain, Li Tianlan looked at summer solstice and the stage of formidable person in Beihai. He said blandly, "It's over." No one knew what summer solstice and Li Tianlan talked about that night. But the young Dong Huang finally chose to stop in front of the stage of formidable person. The blood on the stage of formidable person was washed by the rain and flowed on Mount Dibbing. Under the wind and rain, the stone of formidable person, carved with countless glories and pasts, stood there quietly, gazing at everything. Li Tianlan slowly turned around and walked back. His figure was getting fainter and fainter. Summer solstice stood quietly and watched Li Tianlan's figure getting farther and farther away. A faintly discernible aura appeared on Mount Dibbing without any warning. The crazy wind and rain seemed to be much smaller in an instant. Li Tianlan's figure paused. Lin Fengting and Summer Solstice looked at the side of the stage of formidable person almost at the same time. That was the place where the wounded were temporarily placed on Mount Dibbing. And that position. It was the position of Dijiang. Countless air vibrated slightly in the air. With a powerful force, it gathered crazily toward Dijiang in an instant. Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows and said nothing. Summer Solstice was a little surprised and a little regretful. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and watched this scene quietly. Countless surging forces stirred the air and finally turned into an extremely condensed domain. It broke through. When everything was completely over, Dijiang, who was defeated by Li Tianlan, officially stepped into the invincible realm in absolute humiliation. After the disappearance of Sword Emperor, he was the second new invincible realm expert of the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan smiled. He didn't take advantage of Dijiang's serious injury to kill this threat. He just glanced at it casually and said calmly, "When your injury is healed, come to Tiannan to find me. I will give you a chance to challenge me." Confident, strong, invincible, and condescending. His figure stepped into the sky and never looked back. The glimmer of the morning sun reflected his figure that was getting higher and higher. At this moment, everyone on Mount Dibbing was looking up at the chosen one who had completely risen. Li Tianlan's figure moved forward. He waved his palm in the air. In an instant, an incomparably bright light bloomed from his hand. That light was so cold, so bright, and so dazzling. The shining silver light swallowed the morning sun, shone on Mount Dibbing, the stage of formidable person, and the surging North Sea. It was as cold as the moon, but with endless sharpness. Summer Solstice's palm moved, but she finally chose to be silent. People looked at Li Tianlan, who was getting higher and higher, and at the silver light that was falling gradually. The moon-like sharpness crossed North Sea, crossed the steps of the stage of formidable person, and finally fell on the top of the stone of formidable person with incomparable sharpness. The metal pierced into the rock. With a slight sound, the silver long sword was directly inserted above the stone of formidable person, trembling in the morning sun. Li Tianlan's figure had disappeared in the air. But the long sword shining with a cold luster was still facing the wind and rain, looking down at Mount Dibbing. The 13th floor. The silver moon soared. From the moment Li Tianlan officially stepped into North Sea, everything seemed to have been predestined. Tianguang's soul lock platform. The silver moon fell into North Sea. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 662. Until Li Tianlan left for a long time, no one under the stage of formidable person said a word. Too many things happened on Mount Dibbing that day. Mount Dibbing was reduced to ruins. Dijiang suffered a crushing defeat, but he broke through to the invincible realm. Wang Yuetong broke with Li Tianlan. Blood flowed like a river on the stage of formidable person. The silver moon fell on North Sea. The light of dawn grew brighter and brighter. The wind and rain never stopped over Xingzhou. The crazy rain covered the entire Beihai province, as if it was constantly destroying the backbone of Beihai province. Summer Solstice raised her head and looked at the direction where Li Tianlan disappeared. She was silent for a long time. The sword light had disappeared. Mount Dibbing ushered in the day. Li Tianlan had really left. Everything was completely over. Summer Solstice took a deep breath, feeling a little tired. Clean up. She paused, looked at the large ruins around her, and said in a low voice, try to restore Mount Dibbing to its original state as soon as possible. Light footsteps sounded behind Summer Solstice. Wang Qinglei walked over slowly, with no expression on his face. Everyone noticed this scene. The tense atmosphere of the Wang family of Beihai had disappeared, but an extremely subtle atmosphere was constantly spreading. Wang Qinglei's figure separated the crowd and came to Summer Solstice. Summer Solstice looked at him, her eyes calm. When has the Wang family of Beihai ever been so aggrieved? Wang Qinglei looked at Summer Solstice with no expression on his face, and his voice was cold. Denounce me? Everyone's heart shook violently. The wind and rain filled the world. At this moment, there seemed to be a clear tearing sound coming from inside the Wang family of Beihai. The cracks that had always been hidden under the undercurrent seemed to instantly expand and become extremely ferocious and obvious. That's right. Another voice sounded abruptly. The Wang family of Beihai has never been humiliated like this for hundreds of years. A middle-aged man with a somewhat gloomy expression stood out and stood behind Wang Qinglei. He was the patriarch of a branch of the Wang family of Beihai. He was very close to Wang Qinglei and could be said to be Wang Qinglei's real confidant. In the vast Beihai province, Wang Qinglei didn't have much influence among the 7 sword-holding families, but he had many supporters among the many branches of the Wang family of Beihai, and the one in front of him was one of them. When Li Tianlan was killing on the stage a formidable person, he had been standing at the back of the crowd. Now that Li Tianlan had left, he finally remembered his mission and remembered that this was Mount Dibbing, the holy land that the Wang family of Beihai had guarded for hundreds of years. The silver moon sword was stabbed into the top of the stone of formidable person, gently trembling in the wind and rain. The middle-aged man with a gloomy face suddenly pointed in that direction. For hundreds of years, no one has dared to stick a weapon on the stone of formidable person so arrogantly. Who does Li Tianlan think he is? Does he deserve it? Without any hesitation, his figure suddenly soared into the sky, heading straight for the stone of formidable person. Countless thunderbolts circled around his body. At this moment, he looked incomparably brave. If none of you dare to move, I'll do it. He felt that his voice and posture were heroic. At this moment, he felt that he was the hero of the Wang family of Beihai. He stretched out his hand, wanting to pull out the silver moon that had brought endless humiliation to the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Qinglei frowned. Summer Solstice said nothing, but there was some mockery in her eyes. Everyone was watching this scene. The bright thunderbolt completely wrapped the middle-aged man's body. He stretched out his hand and fell on the hilt of the silver moon. Li Tianlan had already left. The hilt of the silver moon suddenly trembled. In an instant, the sword. The bright and cold sword light covered the stage of formidable person. It flashed for a moment. The thunderbolt disappeared. The middle-aged man who felt that he was very brave also disappeared. The blood mist fell all over the sky, and then was washed away by the wind and rain. The corner of Lin Fengding's mouth moved, but he didn't say anything. He probably called him an idiot in his heart. Xinyuan Feng was a truly conscious magic weapon. Although he was not a human being, he could already be regarded as a life. The silver moon was a part of Xinyuan Feng. Tonight, the silver moon absorbed the energy of the devil troop, and its spirituality was almost at its peak. At this moment, the silver moon did not have Li Tianlan's sword intent. It was completely the sword intent of the sword. If one wanted to pull out the sword, one had to have the strength. There was a dead silence under the stage of formidable person. Everyone was looking at the silver moon on the stone of formidable person, and their hearts were extremely cold. Summer Solstice turned to look at Wang Qinglei, and said calmly, "It's only temporary." The aggressive Wang Qinglei seemed to be stunned by the scene of the silver moon sword. He raised his finger and was silent for a long time, but he didn't say anything in the end. The field of power in the air that covered a radius of dozens of meters was completely silent. Wang Qinglei hesitated for a moment, and then walked toward Dijiang. Dijiang was lying in a half-collapsed palace, covered in blood, and quietly looking at the roof. He broke through to the invincible realm when he was seriously injured. After the breakthrough, his injuries didn't get better. Instead, because of the sudden increase in strength during the breakthrough, his injuries became more serious. He lay there, motionless, like a statue. He didn't even react when Wang Qinglei and summer solstice came in. At this moment, no one knew what he was thinking. But it was something that many people wanted to know. Wang Qinglei walked to Dijiang and squinted at him. After a long time, he asked, "What did Li Tianlan say to you in the end?" Many people were paying attention to Dijiang's next answer. Only summer solstice turned her head and looked into the distance through the half-collapsed palace. In the light of dawn, there seemed to be a delicate water drop falling through the wind and rain. Summer solstice looked at it quietly for a long time. Finally, Dijiang's voice sounded. He told the truth, he didn't say anything. Wang Qinglei squinted and smiled. He didn't believe Dijiang. Not at all. At that moment, countless people looked at Dijiang with cold eyes. Song Ci finally let out a long sigh of relief after she carefully treated the wound and saw that the bleeding had completely stopped. Wang Yuedong's breath had calmed down, but her face was still extremely pale and haggard. Song Ci felt sorry for her and tidied her hair. Looking at her face, she couldn't say anything for a while. "How is she?" Tang Shi asked, standing aside. "She's fine now." Song Ci thought for a moment and said, "Yuetong was seriously injured, but now, she should be fine." Wang Yuedong's sword that pierced into her heart was grabbed by Li Tianlan. Although it was shifted by an inch, the sword energy that entered her body also caused fatal injuries to her body. But summer solstice still had half of immortality, which was enough to stabilize Wang Yuedong's condition in the shortest time. If there are no accidents, she should wake up in a few days. Song Ci said. Tang Shi was in a trance. Compared with Song Ci, who didn't appear in front of people for a long time, Wang Yuetong actually had a better relationship with Tang Shi. Because of this, thinking of the sword that Wang Yuetong resolutely pierced into her chest, Tang Shi felt more uncomfortable. She felt uncomfortable. They were now in the most remote corner of Mount Dibbing. Few people came here on weekdays, but there was also a decorative palace here. It was very small, but now it had become one of the few well-preserved enemies in Mount Dibbing. Sitting here, far away from the stage of formidable person, everything outside the room seemed to have nothing to do with them. Tang Shi sat down next to Wang Yuetong and carefully held her cold palm. After a long time, she whispered, "What will she do in the future?" She would wake up eventually. But what would happen after she woke up? Would she stay here, suffer lovesickness and loneliness, become enemies with Li Tianlan, and finally turn all the love into hatred? Or would she let go of everything today and return to Li Tianlan? Song Ci also fell silent. She didn't know how to answer this question. It was impossible for Wang Yuetong to let go of Beihai and Li Tianlan. For Wang Yuetong, it might be easier not to wake up than to wake up, right? After all, she still loves the wrong person. Song Ci whispered. There is no right or wrong. Tang Shi shook her head. Since she has fallen in love, it is right. If there is anything wrong, it is the past grievances that are wrong. Song Ci still wanted to say something, but she suddenly turned her head. Her body tightened, and her face became extremely dignified in an instant. An extremely soft and gentle force seemed to approach the palace, which was barely intact, and shrouded the whole palace. In Song Ci's sight, a very delicate water droplet went through the window. It was so delicate and perfect, looking for something with a little confused consciousness. Finally, it found its target and slowly fell on Wang Yuedong's chest. Song Ci looked at it quietly and didn't speak for a long time. The little thing that looked like a water droplet was extremely delicate. It was stuck to Wang Yuedong's chest like a beautiful pendant. What is it? Tangshur stretched out her hand in surprise, as if she wanted to touch it. It's so beautiful. Don't move. Song Si held Tangshur's hand. She was Wang Xingxiao's woman, and Tangshur was also Wang Xingxiao's woman. The two could be said to be rivals in love, but their relationship was not bad. Of course, it was not good either. Strictly speaking, they were not very familiar with each other. But no matter what, she could not watch Tangshur be swallowed by danger. Tangshur didn't know martial arts, so she thought this little thing was beautiful. But in Song Si's perception, this little thing that was as delicate as a water droplet had the power to destroy the whole palace in an instant. Under that delicate appearance, she felt all the sword intent that was restrained to the extreme. This is a sword. Song Si whispered, the sword in the 13th floor. The 13th floor. The heartbreaking sword. Song Si didn't know the name of this sword, but now it didn't matter at all. This was Li Tianlan's love for Wang Yuetong. Song Si looked at Wang Yuetong's face and laughed at herself. Li Tianlan was really good to Wang Yuetong. But this heartbreaking sword had already explained Li Tianlan's attitude. Li Tianlan did not show mercy to the Wang family of Beihai. His only concession might be that he didn't destroy the stage of formidable person. But the silver moon fell into Beihai, and the sharp sword edge had been inserted into the stone of formidable person. Song Si paid more attention to the negotiation between summer solstice and Li Tianlan. How much did the Wang family of Beihai have to pay to calm Li Tianlan's anger for everything that happened today? And what did Wang Yuetong get? She looked at her pale face and sighed softly. I still love the wrong person. Chapter 663. When everything was really calm, summer solstice came to the ruins of a palace that had completely collapsed according to her memory. This palace was also in the corner of Mount Dibbing, a place that was not usually noticed. Summer solstice stood beside the ruins and was silent for a while, then gently waved her hand. Her gentle movement brought a gust of wind. The powerful wind blew the ruins up with a rhythm. On the dusty floor, she found a switch and pressed it. The ground was shaking slightly. The cracked floor was separated to both sides, and the cracks on the ground were shattered, looking more and more ferocious. A deep passage appeared in front of summer solstice. The light at the front of the passage had been extinguished, and the alloy walls on both sides were slightly distorted. Therefore, when the passage opened, the sound was extremely harsh. Summer solstice looked calm and walked along the passage. At the end of the passage was not a secret research room with a high-tech atmosphere, but a rather luxurious and comfortable space. When summer solstice came in, 4 or 5 middle-aged men and women in white research uniforms were sitting on the sofa, talking about something with a dignified face. Seeing summer solstice coming in, they stood up at the same time and said respectfully, "Madam. What are you talking about?" Summer solstice chuckled and took the initiative to ask. There are some small problems in the research process. We are discussing whether there is a better solution. The oldest middle-aged man had white hair on his temples. As he spoke, he picked up a notebook from his pocket and quickly jotted something down. Then, he smiled and said, "So far, it seems that the results of the discussion are not bad." The ground of Mount Dibbing had long been a mess with blood flowing like a river. But separated by the thick alloy walls, the ground and the underground were two completely different worlds. Just like many people rarely cared about what the real underground core places of the Wang family of Beihai were doing, they just chose to pay attention to the results. These people in the Underground Research Institute also rarely paid attention to what was happening on the ground. At this moment, these people in front of them didn't even know what was happening on the ground. Summer solstice didn't say much. She just nodded and said casually, "Where is Naylan? The doctor has just made a new discovery and is making a record." The oldest middle-aged man replied. When it came to the doctor, his respectful attitude was far better than when he was facing summer solstice. Summer solstice nodded and said, "Go ahead." Then she walked to one of the rooms. The middle-aged men and women looked at each other for a moment. They wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, they didn't stop him. In the center of the resting area, there was a room that stood out from the masses. The room was located in the center, and the silver door frame could be said to be the most eye-catching color in the resting area. Xie stopped in front of the silver door and knocked on it. The room was silent for a moment before a pleasant voice rang out, "Come in." Summer Solstice pushed the door open. The room was filled with silvery light that shone on her body. Her body seemed to be somewhat transparent. This was an incomparably pure room. The walls, the table, the chairs, the bed, and the bedsheets were all silver. The exquisite room was not big. A very young woman was sitting in front of a small desk. She wore a pair of silver glasses and was typing seriously on the keyboard. When Xie walked in, she didn't even raise her head. She just said lightly, "What's the matter?" Focused men are very attractive. Focused women are more attractive. The woman had delicate and neat short hair and a jade-like face. She sat quietly in front of the computer in a meticulous posture. The whole person looked as beautiful as a painting. Her delicate face was extremely focused and almost serious. This seriousness turned into a kind of coldness that kept people thousands of miles away, like an iceberg in a room full of silver light. The light blended together and was extremely cold and sharp. "I heard that you have a new discovery." Summer Solstice closed the door, stood in the room full of silver light, and laughed. The sound of typing on the keyboard suddenly stopped. The woman behind the screen finally raised her head and saw Summer Solstice. She seemed to be stunned for a while, then stood up and called her auntie in a flat voice. She was not warm, not cold. The silver glasses were taken off by her. She looked at Summer Solstice and didn't ask her to sit down. She just said quietly, "Auntie, what's the matter?" Without the cover of her eyes suddenly became extremely charming. They were different from the black pupils of ordinary people. There was a trace of incomparably deep and enchanting silver in her eyes. Resplendent, silent, enchanting, yet incomparably arrogant. The Wang family of Beihai had an indomitable sword emperor, who supported everything of the Wang family of Beihai like a sea-stabilizing needle. Under the huge figure of Wang Tianzong, there were also many soul figures in the Wang family of Beihai. Some were well known. Some were unknown. Some of them rarely appeared, but their names had already spread far and wide. The young woman in front of him happened to belong to the third category. She rarely left Mount Dibing and had never left Beihai. But in Zhongzhou State and the Dark World, almost everyone who paid attention to the Wang family of Beihai knew that there was such a code name. Silver Eyes. She had a double doctorate in human biology and genetics, and was the main person in charge of the biological laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai. Perhaps such an identity was not enough to attract everyone's attention. But in recent years, there had been clear evidence that the woman with the code name Silver Eyes had devoted herself to research that had always attracted worldwide attention. This was the core project of the Wang family of Beihai. The development of the third generation of immortality potion was currently in charge of the woman in front of him. She was Nalan Shuriying, the genius of this generation of the Nalan family of Beihai. The Nalan family was not one of the 7 major sword-holding families in Beihai. But in the past 200 years, the patriarch of the Nalan family of every generation had a name recognized by countless people. The first famous doctor in Zhongzhou State. This was a real famous doctor family, or even a real Dr. King family. Summer Solstice looked at Nalan Shuriying quietly. Her eyes were a little distressed. It was not pity, but pity, and some regret. She took the initiative to sit down on a chair next to her. She looked at the other party's silver and proud eyes and didn't speak for a long time. Nalan Shuriying put down her work and silently poured a glass of water for Summer Solstice. "Up there," Summer Solstice pointed up and whispered, "Something happened just now, but it's over now." "Li Tianlan?" Nalan Shuriying asked. Summer Solstice was a little surprised. "How do you know?" "I talked to my father on the phone a few days ago. He said that Beihai has not been peaceful recently." Nalan Shuriying said indifferently. "Yes, it's not just peaceful. From the south to the north, he really penetrated the whole Beihai. Summer Solstice held the glass of water and was silent for a long time. Then she laughed at herself. A strange emotion flashed through Nayland Shuriying's silver eyes. She grew up in Beihai, so she naturally knew how powerful the Wang family of Beihai in Beihai province was. After hundreds of years of development, the Wang family of Beihai today was a family that was infinitely close to perfection. The so-called perfection meant that there was no weakness. The Wang family of Beihai had almost no weakness. Force, foundation, power, wealth, and talent reserve. The Wang family of Beihai had everything. In such a Wang family of Beihai, in such a Beihai province, could someone really sweep all the way and directly step into Mount Dibbing? Nayland Shuriying had no concept of this form of strength. She didn't understand martial arts, so she naturally didn't know what the so-called invincibility was. She only cared about one result. Did we lose? Summer Solstice was silent for a long time. Although it was a little embarrassing, there were some things that she still had to tell the truth. We lost. Nayland Shuriying's fingers trembled slightly. Her eyes were still calm, and the subtle emotional fluctuations just now had completely calmed down. She lowered her head slightly and asked, Dijiang also lost? Dijiang entered the invincible realm. Summer Solstice said softly. Nayland Shuriying didn't speak and was lost in thought. It's very chaotic up there now. A lot of things have to be dealt with, and it can't be done in a short time. Summer Solstice took a deep breath, looked at Nayland Shuriying, and suddenly smiled. Nayland, have you ever thought about leaving Beihai for a while? Nayland Shuriying didn't seem to hear the question. She shook her head. We may have lost, but Li Tianlan didn't win either. Everyone knows that the real valuable core places of Mount Dibbing are some research institutes located underground. Even if he wins the battle on the ground, how many people can he kill? As long as those research institutes are not destroyed, the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai will not be shaken. She paused and said lightly, at most, it will be a little embarrassing. This can also prove that Li Tianlan is very sober. Summer Solstice said, it's not that he doesn't want to touch our research institutes, but he can't. We won't let him touch them, neither will Zhongzhou State. He also knows this very well. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't see it. Nayland Shuriying didn't speak. She didn't understand these things, so she didn't bother to ask. She wanted to ask how Dijiang was, but she swallowed the words when they were on the tip of her tongue. Why are you telling me this? After a long period of silence, she asked faintly. Do you want to leave Beihai? Well, for a while. Summer Solstice repeated the question just now. Nayland Shuriying didn't speak. She looked at Summer Solstice with a puzzled expression. Leave? There was a blank emotion in her silver eyes. Where to? Go to Tiannan, or Yuzhou. Summer Solstice deliberated and was a little uncertain. We need you to do your best to cure a wounded person. I'll tell the lab in your home, and I'll assign you the most professional assistants. Nayland Shuriying understood. Is this Li Tianlan's condition? She asked softly. Summer Solstice agreed to his condition, which meant the compromise of the Wang family of Beihai. How many years had the Wang family of Beihai never given in the dark world? Had it already reached this step? Summer Solstice finally smiled bitterly without hiding it. In an angle that Nayland Shuriying couldn't see, she clenched her fists tightly. Li Tianlan's condition? It could be said that, but it was more than that. The Wang family of Beihai had to ensure that Dongqing Rushi recovered, so Nayland Shuriying leaving Mount Dibbing was just the first step. Wang Yuedong's sword finally stopped Li Tianlan from stepping on the stage of formidable person. But it couldn't stop the silver moon from falling into Beihai. And it couldn't stop her from negotiating with Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was so generous, but what the Wang family of Beihai had to pay was more than just Nayland Shuriying. She thought about the series of conditions, and her arms were trembling slightly. More than 20 years ago, she united with Kunlun City to set off the Li family's treason case, which was equivalent to ending the glory of the Li family with her own hands. And today, more than 20 years later, the series of conditions, were they conditions? She shook her head. No. She whispered in a complicated tone, this is the rise of the Li family. Chapter 664. Dongqing Wudi didn't sleep all night. That night, countless people in Zhongzhou State and even the entire dark world waited silently for dawn. The mighty vanguard was still gathering toward the floating island and Kanglan in the light of dawn. In the pavilion on the hillside, Dongqing Wudi gently patted the ancient railing and looked at the still rushing Kanglan River. He was as solemn as a statue. Bai Qingzhao sat on the stone bench behind him and put the teapot that he had been playing with all night on the table. He looked a little restless. No news from Tianlan? Dongqing Wudi shook his head slowly and said lightly, no news is good news. Bai Qingzhao was silent for a while and did not speak. He climbed Mount Dibing alone. Li Tianlan let the whole dark world see his courage. But it also meant that he had to face countless dangers. Although Dongqing Wudi mobilized a large number of troops and fundamentally suppressed the most powerful Beihai corps of the Wang family of Beihai, neither of them was sure whether there was any backup plan on Mount Dibing. It had been a night since Li Tianlan stepped into Mount Dibing. But they still did not receive any news about Mount Dibing. There shouldn't be any problem. Dongqing Wudi suddenly said. With Tianlan's current strength, there can be no accident if he defeats Dijiang on Mount Dibing. Now the Wang family of Beihai has internal and external troubles. It is impossible for Summer Solstice to take action in person. If she doesn't take action, Mount Dibing will not have the power to balance Tianlan. Bai Qingzhao's fingers unconsciously rubbed the teapot in front of him. After a long time, he said, is it possible for Wang Tianzong to take action by force? This had always been his biggest concern and the focus of everyone in the dark world. The eternal sword in Eastern Europe could be said to be the strongest sword in hundreds of years. People could be sure that Wang Tianzong was seriously injured in that sword, but no one could be sure how serious Wang Tianzong's injury was. If they were not sure, no one dared to act rashly. Li Tianlan's approach gave everyone a chance to observe the Wang family of Beihai. Tianguang's spirit lock platform. All the way. The entire Beihai province was constantly in turmoil. Wang Tianzong never showed up. This made the whole dark world realize something, but they could not be sure, or they could not believe it. Until today. Li Tianlan, who had defeated the entire Beihai province, set foot on Mount Dibing. Would Wang Tianzong show up? If he appeared, based on the realm he showed in Eastern Europe, even if he could barely make a sword move, Li Tianlan would not be able to block it. Impossible. Dongqing Wudi smiled and replied in a light but affirmative voice, he's lucky to be alive now. Maybe he's already dead. It's impossible for him to take action by force. Bai Qingzhao turned his head in the direction of Xingzhou and did not speak for a long time. Don't worry. Dongqing Wudi sat opposite him and poured himself a cup of cold tea that had long been cold. Although there is no news yet, it should be soon. Don't you think it's strange? Bai Qingzhao suddenly asked. What do you mean? Dongqing Wudi glanced at him. The Wang family of Beihai is too quiet. Even without Wang Tianzong, the comprehensive strength of the Wang family of Beihai is still extremely strong. But this time, their performance is too quiet, so quiet that it can even be said to be a little weak. Tianlan defeated the entire Beihai province. Mount Dibing is facing the enemy so passively, and Dijiang is asking to be humiliated. Do they really have no means to threaten Li Tianlan? Even if they don't have force, the Wang family of Beihai has never been weak in science and technology. Well, even if we don't talk about it, since Tianlan stepped into Beihai, has there been any movement in Zhongzhou State? No. Not at all. The Southeast group has been silent all this time. This is too abnormal. Bai Qingzhao's voice was calm and doubtful. Don't you understand? Dongqing Wudi laughed. Because Beihai is a part of Zhongzhou State. He said slowly, Zhongzhou State is a country, a camp, and there are rules in the same camp. Tianlan came to Beihai this time to ask for an explanation. He stepped on the Wang family's face, but he never did anything. What Zhongzhou state can't accept is to abide by the rules. Even if the Wang family of Beihai really has the means to kill Tianlan, they can't use it. If they use it, they don't abide by the rules. Within the rules, as long as Tianlan has the strength, he can sweep everything. What can the Wang family of Beihai do to him? It's not like that. Bai Qingzhao shook his head solemnly. Even if the Wang family of Beihai doesn't touch Tianlan, can't the Southeast group make a fuss in other places? The Wang family of Beihai was the strongest force in the dark world. In Zhongzhou state, the Southeast group led by the Wang family of Beihai was also one of the strongest groups in Zhongzhou state. Its influence was obviously stronger than that of the giant group and even the academics. The unusual silence of the Southeast group was what made him most uneasy. It's still the same sentence. Dongxing Wudi said slowly, Beihai is a part of Zhongzhou state. Am I right to say that? Dongxing Wudi asked. Of course. Bai Qingzhao said without hesitation. It's true. For hundreds of years, this sentence has been said in Beihai and Zhongzhou state. Dongxing Wudi's smile was a little cold. It's a fact. But who will really think that such a fact is a fact? In history, many decisions of the Wang family of Beihai have more or less affected the direction of the general trend of Zhongzhou state. Of course, such an influence is often benign. But generation after generation of ruling groups and rulers, they will not think that benign is good. Dongxing Wudi waved his hand. No one will deny the contribution and importance of the Wang family of Beihai to Zhongzhou state. But Beihai is just a province, and the Wang family is just a family. A family, but it affects the general trend of the whole Zhongzhou state. No matter how good such an influence is, what's the point in the eyes of those in power? It's meaningless. They will only think that it's abnormal. Whether it's good or bad, such a result is indeed abnormal. Beihai is a part of Zhongzhou state, and Beihai province belongs to Zhongzhou state. Ha, ha ha, for hundreds of years, every generation of rulers will think about a problem at some time. Do you know what it is? In Dongxing Wudi's light voice, Bai Qingzhao clearly perceived a huge, almost majestic pressure. He subconsciously sat up straight and shook his head. The problem they think about is surprisingly consistent. When the Wang family of Beihai influenced Zhongzhou state countless times, every ruler will think that Beihai province belongs to Zhongzhou state. But because of the existence of the Wang family, what is the actual situation? Does the Wang family of Beihai belong to Zhongzhou state, or does Zhongzhou state actually belong to the Wang family of Beihai? His clear and faint voice was like a thunder, rolling over Bai Qingzhao's head in an instant. Bai Qingzhao's face changed. In the cool morning light of Beihai, the wind of the Kanglan River blew across both sides. But his forehead was instantly covered with a layer of cold sweat. After all, Beihai belonged to Zhongzhou state. Or had Zhongzhou state always belonged to the Wang family of Beihai? This could be said to be the most sensitive question. Dongxing Rushi waved her hand. The answer is not important. The important thing is that I have just said that it's abnormal. The Southeast group is not deliberately silent, but it has to be silent. Because they are also in power, they may not think it's abnormal. But there are 6 groups in Zhongzhou state. The will of the Southeast group is very important, but the will of the other 5 groups is equally important. If they think it's abnormal, then it's abnormal. Dongxing Wudi said calmly. Bai Qingzhao's tone was a little dry. The president talked to me about this topic. Dongxing Wudi was silent for a while, then slowly said, since it's abnormal, we have to correct it. Bai Qingzhao's breathing was a little uneven. How to correct it? Beihai province belongs to Zhongzhou state. This is the truth, and the truth should become the real truth. Dongxing Wudi said, don't you understand? At least for now, the Wang family of Beihai has temporarily lacked the power to sweep everything. Therefore, the current Beihai and the Southeast Group are not facing the pressure brought by the alliance of the Giant Group and the academics. They are facing the pressure from the tacit alliance of the 5 groups in Zhongzhou State. They must remain silent. Bai Qingzhao was silent for a long time. No wonder. Although everything Li Tianlan did in Beihai did not touch the bottom line, it was not without impropriety. But Zhongzhou State was always silent. So that was it. Zhongzhou State completely wanted to use Li Tianlan to expose the weakness of the Wang family of Beihai to everyone. When everyone noticed the weakness of Beihai and was ready to take action, Zhongzhou State would attack strongly and sweep everything away. Beihai must realize the benefits of being close to Zhongzhou State, and they must also be aware of their own position. They were just a province of Zhongzhou State, not the master of Zhongzhou State. Let's be clear. Zhongzhou State's move was completely to quietly weaken the autonomy of the Wang family of Beihai and Beihai province. You already have the clearest goal? Bai Qingzhao smiled bitterly. He was sure that such a plan was only brewing in the minds of a limited number of people, and it might even only be brewing in the minds of a few council members of Zhongzhou State. Many members might not be qualified to know. Bai Qingzhao knew that he did not have enough authority, but he could not help but ask. At present, the clearest goal is to nationalize the number 03 base in Beihai. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. Bai Qingzhao's expression suddenly changed, and he even stood up directly. In the silence that lasted for countless years and generations, Zhongzhou State finally showed its long-hidden fangs in the most suitable opportunity. To the Wang family of Beihai. Zhongzhou State's move was not necessarily a stab to the Wang family of Beihai, but this series of actions was undoubtedly putting a rope around the Wang family of Beihai. Number 03 base in Beihai. This was a base that had only been reported in legends, and few people knew the exact location of this base. This was the nuclear experimental base of the Wang family of Beihai. At present, all the nuclear power stations, even military equipment, and even nuclear weapons of the Wang family of Beihai were closely related to the number 03 base. There were too many possibilities for what it meant to completely incorporate the number 03 base into the system of Zhongzhou State. Are you sure? Bai Qingzhao slowly sat down and subconsciously lowered his voice. This is the best chance. Dongqing Wudi said calmly, we have to try. If things really reach the point of no return, then, Bai Qingzhao trembled subconsciously, and his face was a little pale. There is no such if. Dongqing Wudi smiled and said, we are not fools. We won't act recklessly. The phone suddenly rang. Dongqing Wudi took the phone and glanced at the number. He raised his eyebrows slightly, and his tense spirit seemed to relax in an instant. It's a call from Tianlan. He said cheerfully and picked up the call. Minister, I will go ashore in Longjiang by boat and go to Sai City by the way. Li Tianlan's low voice sounded. Dongqing Wudi froze for a moment and said subconsciously, things are not going well? After a long silence, Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said blankly, I don't know. He didn't know if things were going well. He fought through Beihai and climbed Mount Dibing. Now, he didn't want to think about these things. Summer solstice promised me a lot of things. We'll talk about it in detail when we meet. He said slowly. Dongqing Wudi's face relaxed and he nodded. He knew the result of Li Tianlan's trip, so he naturally knew what he should do. What do you want from Zhongzhou State? I can operate it. He took the initiative to speak. Li Tianlan smiled. His voice seemed a little tired, but it was extremely stable. No need. He said, I don't have any requirements for Zhongzhou State. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a long time before he laughed and looked extremely happy. He nodded approvingly. This is the most correct thing to do. Can you tell me what you think? Nothing. Li Tianlan said quietly, I just think I should tell some people that I belong to Zhongzhou State, not the other way around. Chapter 665. Li Tianlan's voice was full of calmness and reason, as if he had thought about it for a long time. Dongqing Wudi's body relaxed completely. His eyes were happy, and he looked extremely gratified. Compared with Li Tianlan's sweeping the entire Beihai province, he was more willing to see Li Tianlan's current choice. He had no requirements for Zhongzhou state. This approach was not only correct, it could even be said to be mature and wise. This was not a reversal of ideas, but a transformation of fundamental thinking. Dongqing Wudi didn't know if Li Tianlan was aware of this, but when he said this decision, Dongqing Wudi clearly noticed Li Tianlan's change. He was still moving forward on martial arts. He was invincible and had no retreat. But in the general trend, he had learned to give in. He gave in from the perspective of a superior. Not making any requirements for Zhongzhou state was a good move that amazed Dongqing Wudi. It was related to his bravery in Beihai. This advance and retreat were almost all the essence. Many benefits of everything today might be reflected for a long time. But giving up the immediate benefits that Zhongzhou state gave to East Emperor Palace was enough to show that Li Tianlan's vision was getting farther and farther. In the early morning light, the wind blew over the hillside and passed through Dongqing Wudi's white temples. He could hardly hide the smile on his lips. This was what he wanted. He wanted more than an invincible realm expert who could sweep everything. He wanted a real heir. Such a person should not only be invincible in force, but also have no shortcomings in all aspects. I support your decision. Without any hesitation, Dongqing Wudi expressed his attitude with a smile. Li Tianlan said no more and quietly hung up the phone. How was it? Bai Qingzhao asked at once. Very good. Dongqing Wudi said with a smile, Qingzhao, how do you think Zhongzhou state should face a Tianlan who has no requirements? Bai Qingzhao froze and looked thoughtful. Dongqing Wudi turned to look at the rushing river and muttered to himself, I can't wait to see their reaction. Dongqing Wudi wanted to see the collective reaction of the high-level officials of Zhongzhou state. This morning, when many places around the world were still shrouded in darkness, countless people in the dark world saw the reaction of the Wang family of Beihai. The silver moon fell into Beihai. That day, the palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace did not go to the stage of formidable person. However, he left his mark on the stone of ambition forever. The Wang family of Beihai was silent. From beginning to end, in the face of great humiliation and Li Tianlan's aggressiveness, the Wang family of Beihai chose to compromise in the embarrassment that made onlookers uncomfortable. Even the fact that Li Tianlan never stepped into the stage of formidable person was not the Wang family of Beihai's role. It was because of Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. 3 hours after the battle on Mount Dibing ended. The scene of the battle on the mountain had completely spread throughout the dark world. The Sword Emperor's era, which had lasted for decades, seemed to have completely passed from this moment onwards. Countless people began to quietly think about the plan for the Wang family of Beihai. In a mysterious and turbulent undercurrent. In Eastern Europe, the disciples who had been severely injured by the robbery were finally able to get out of bed and move. The disciples did not return to the European Holy Land with the Vatican. The tribulation on the night before the day of eradication had almost broken the sharpest blade of the Vatican. Arcis, an expert at the peak of the invincible realm who ranked third on the divine list, died. Thousands of the most elite saint warriors of the Vatican had suffered heavy casualties. The entire Vatican had ushered in a serious loss that had not occurred in decades. Its comprehensive strength could even be said to have been weakened by half overnight. The disciple, who had exposed his identity and position, stayed in Eastern Europe to recuperate. Now he was basically out of the order of the Vatican. The disciple had now been transferred to Reki City and was quietly taken care of by an inconspicuous small family. Such a small family was not even close to the rich and powerful. At best, it could only be regarded as a relatively rich family. Because of this, such a family was not worth paying attention to at all. The disciple recuperated here quietly. Today, when Reki City was still under full martial law, he was not even disturbed once. He quietly lurked in Reki City, quietly recuperated, and coldly watched the various changes in the dark world. Only occasionally would he contact the extremely mysterious His Majesty. The result of Mount Dibbing spread throughout the dark world in the shortest time. That strange video almost followed the result and spread in the dark world. The devil troop, Dijiang, the Wang family of Beihai, and countless elites who had attacked Xuanyuantai all fell. Blood flowed like a river. Wang Yuetong pulled out a sword and stabbed herself in the heart. The picture was clear and stable. Li Tianlan in the video was strong and cold. This kind of horror had been well known with this video at this time. The disciple watched the video silently, over and over again. He picked up the mobile phone on the table and quietly thought about whether he should call His Majesty. The door was pushed open silently. Under the soft light, a figure who seemed to be shrouded in darkness and shadows came in. "Have you watched the video?" He glanced at the disciple and asked in a calm voice. The disciple's body stiffened in place. He stared at the figure who came in. The dark shadow seemed to linger around him, and everything around him seemed extremely vague. This was enough to show that the other party's control of power had reached an incredible level. Even the disciple who was close to the peak of the invincible realm could not see his face clearly for a while. But in the extremely blurry shadows, he finally saw a trace of a familiar silhouette. And this voice was even more familiar to him. The disciple almost jumped up all of a sudden. The violent movement affected his injury, and his face suddenly turned pale. He gave a muffled groan, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, but he became extremely excited. "Your Majesty." His voice was high, but he tried his best to suppress it. "Your Majesty, is it you?" This was the first time he had seen the real body of His Majesty. It was a little vague, but it was extremely real. Before this, the disciple had only seen His Majesty once. But the His Majesty he saw was just a sword intent of His Majesty. After that, the communication between the two was basically on the phone or through the internet. But this time, this extremely vague figure made the disciple tremble slightly. He was sure that this was not a sword intent of His Majesty. It was the real His Majesty. "Why are you so excited?" In the darkness, His Majesty's indifferent and soft low laugh rang out. "How are your injuries?" "Fortunately, I can recover soon." The disciple's suppressed voice became a little hoarse. His injuries were actually very serious. If he recovered to his heyday, it would take at least 2 or 3 years. But within half a year, he felt that he could recover at least 60% of his combat capability. Such combat capability was basically invincible in today's dark world, as long as he didn't meet Li Tianlan. The disciple thought and subconsciously looked at the video again. In the video, Li Tianlan raised his palm, so calm and so majestic. In the sword intent, a large number of elites of the Wang family of Beihai who rushed to Li Tianlan were torn apart. The disciple's heart suddenly became more and more depressed. "It's wonderful." His Majesty was also enjoying the video. He was silent for a long time, and then slowly said, "The video is also very clear." The disciple was stunned and remembered what he had just thought. "Your Majesty, this video is a little strange." "Why?" His Majesty asked. "This is a battle that happened on Mount Dibbing, which is the base camp of the Wang family of Beihai. In fact, I'm a little surprised that the news spread so quickly. This video is obviously shot at close range. I don't think any force can lurk on Mount Dibbing at this time, even if Sword Emperor is not there." The disciple said. "Indeed." His Majesty nodded. "So this video can't come from other forces. It's obviously shot by someone inside the Wang family of Beihai. There's nothing strange about it." "Inside the Wang family of Beihai?" The disciple was stunned and said reflexively, "Wang Xiaoyao's man?" "Wang Xiaoyao?" His Majesty's tone was a little playful. At that moment, he seemed to become a little strange. "No." He shook his head. "It should be Wang Qinglei. This is like a signal." Li Tianlan in the video is a foreign invasion, but this video represents the internal troubles of the Wang family of Beihai. Tut, is the dignified Beihai going to be in chaos after all? His tone was a little complicated. The silver moon moves Beihai. Tut tut, that's good. The disciple stood aside respectfully and didn't speak. We don't need to care about the Wang family of Beihai at this time. I'm afraid a lot of idiots will jump out eagerly. But in such a sensitive period of the game between Zhongzhou state and the Wang family, whoever stands out will die. His Majesty looked at the video and said, and they'll die in an ugly way. Then what about us? The disciple asked. We'll just focus on developing ourselves. His Majesty turned off the computer. Arrange it. I want to meet the Pope. When everything about Mount Dibbing was spread throughout the dark world in the form of videos, Wang Xingxiao, who was still in Fanyo City, finally walked out of the pile of documents that could drown him. Since coming to Eastern Europe, Wang Xiaoyao, who seemed to have nothing to do but had everything under control, once again sat in front of Wang Xingxiao. There were no documents between them this time, only a flash drive with the video. What is it? Wang Xingxiao stared at the flash drive for a while and suddenly asked. Li Tianlan is in Mount Dibbing. Wang Xiaoyao yawned carelessly. This is a video. Do you want to have a look? Wang Xingxiao's body, which had been calm, seemed to shake for a moment. He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's still laid-back expression, narrowed his eyes, and went straight to the point. Who shot it? Wang Xiaoyao glanced at Wang Xingxiao. Your man. Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows. No. Wang Xiaoyao said blandly, is it Qinglei's man? I want this name. Wang Xingxiao was silent for a while and said slowly. His voice was flat and without any emotion, but it was extremely firm. Wang Xiaoyao did not say anything. Wang Xingxiao seemed to have lost his expectations and said with a poker face, what's the result? Dijiang lost. He lost miserably, but he broke through to the invincible realm. Yuetong was seriously injured in order to stop Li Tianlan. Wang Xiaoyao said blandly, Li Tianlan didn't go to the stage of formidable person, but the silver moon sword in the 13th floor fell on the stone of formidable person. Wang Xingxiao listened to the deliberately simplified result and was silent for a long time. In the silence, he slowly stood up. The flash drive with the video was crushed by him. He walked to the window and looked at the night outside, silent for a long time. The silver moon moved Beihai. When the dark world was in an uproar, no one knew what the young man, who was nominally the first heir of the Wang family of Beihai, was thinking. Wang Xiaoyao quietly looked at his nephew's back, his eyes extremely quiet. Second uncle. After an unknown period of time, Wang Xingxiao suddenly shouted. Wang Xiaoyao responded. Wang Xingxiao turned his head and smiled. He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's eyes and said calmly, I want to go back to Beihai. Now. Chapter 666. When night fell, Li Tianlan's figure finally approached the white snow that had been high up in the north of Zhongzhou state for many years. In the night, Mount Taibai was beautiful and holy. It was a solemn beauty. Li Tianlan stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the top for a long time before he slowly went up. He had been the young governor of Sai City for several years. But except for the time when he traveled thousands of miles, this was the first time he had officially set foot in Sai City, the city of assassins that shocked the whole dark world. White snow, night, mountain forest. In the cold and almost indifferent atmosphere, from every corner and in every direction, eyes gathered on Li Tianlan from time to time and then quickly moved away. These were all secret sentries of Sai City. During the years of silence of the Li family, Sai City had always been aloof from the world within Zhongzhou state. Therefore, there were not many core members in Sai City. Even with the peripheral members, the total number was very small compared to the reputation of Sai City. But these small number of secret sentries were cleverly distributed around Mount Taibai and clearly grasped the movement of the whole mountain. There was almost no blind spot on Mount Taibai where the eyes of countless secret sentries met. Li Tianlan's expression was still calm. He just walked up unhurriedly as if he didn't feel those hidden eyes in the dark. The news that he had come to Sai City seemed to have spread. But it was still silent on Mount Taibai. There was no greeting or cheering. It was unusually quiet. On the path on the mountainside stood a boulder nearly 20 meters high, which looked like a giant in the night. The words, "Military Restricted Zone," still reflected a clear light even in the night. In contrast, the words, "Sai City," above the words were much more low-key. It was said that the 3 scarlet characters were personally written by Situ Tsanyue, the hidden god of Zhongzhou State. They were written in bold calligraphy, cold and sharp. The silence on the top of the mountain remained. Li Tianlan stood in front of the boulder and looked up at the stone tablet in front of him. After a long silence, he continued to climb the mountain. After passing the stone tablet, the snow on the mountain became thicker and thicker. It was all over the mountain, and the snow was dazzling. Li Tianlan's eyes grew calmer. All the battles in Beihai province seemed to have been suppressed in his heart the moment he left Beihai. Walking alone on the mountain road, all he could think about was Sai City. He thought of the support that Sai City had given him since he entered the secular world. He thought of Tribulation, who had been seriously injured and whose foundation had been completely destroyed. He thought of Sunset, who sacrificed herself for him in East Island. He thought of Deep Dream. He thought of Cool Breeze and Flowing Cloud. Sai City. Purgatory of Heaven Capital, Heaven Luo Hall. It was a different form of address. It was the same duty, the same position, and the same person. Sai City was the most mysterious Tian Luo Hall in the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, and it had always been so. Li Tianlan breathed deeply. His figure was like a drifting shadow in the snow that covered the mountains, flickering, almost incorporeal, but his speed was surprisingly fast. It had only been a few days since Li Tianlan woke up in Yuzhou. But in the battle with Dijiang, his dual wind and thunder veins were completely restored, and they were even more powerful than before. Li Tianlan seemed calmer and calmer. His footsteps stepped on the snow as he reached the top of the mountain. In the silent world, he finally saw the first figure he had seen since he came up the mountain. Li Tianlan didn't know if this was a welcome. Deep Dream stood less than 50 meters in front of him. Mi's enemy. Under the night sky, her eyes were shining, filled with fanaticism. Young governor. In the silence, Deep Dream laughed, with undisguised joy in her tone. Welcome back. He was back. Not to welcome him to Mount Dibbing. Li Tianlan's eyes warmed for a moment. He nodded and asked directly, "Where is the governor?" "Her Highness is accompanying the deputy governor." Deep Dream told the truth. "She already knew you came up the mountain. She asked me to wait here and take you there." Li Tianlan didn't say much, but simply said, "Lead the way." Deep Dream turned around and led Li Tianlan forward. Her figure followed Li Tianlan by half a step in a measured way, but she quietly led the way for Li Tianlan. "How many people are there in Sai City?" Li Tianlan walked quietly and suddenly asked. Deep Dream was stunned and whispered, "Including those on the periphery, there are about 2,000 people in Sai City, but there are less than 400 recorded." "Are they all killers?" Li Tianlan asked. If this was the case, Sai City was definitely a very terrible force. What did 400 well-trained professional killers mean? Perhaps in a large-scale war, the same number of killers was far less than the same number of soldiers. But in the dark, 400 professional killers were a nightmare for any force. On the scale of life and death, an assassin would always have an identity with infinite possibilities. Unlike martial arts, they did not even care about realms or battle prowess. For a true assassin, battle prowess was just a means to kill, nothing more. To kill, it was not necessary to rely on force. If there were really 400 professional killers, Li Tianlan's scalp tingled at the thought of that scene. If he stood on the opposite side of Sai City, not to mention the current Emperor Dong's palace, even if Emperor Dong's palace really surpassed the Wang family of Beihai in the future, he would suffer heavy losses in the face of hundreds of professional killers and scrupulous assassination. He might not be afraid of these. But he didn't know how many talents his Emperor Dong's palace would lose. Li Tianlan was lost in thought. That scene really had a trance power when he thought of it. No. Deep Dream interrupted Li Tianlan's fantasy. There are only about 40 real killers in Sai City, that is, those who have reached our graduation level. Among them, Sure and 10 others haven't completed enough tasks. As for the others, some are trained here, and there are some talents in other fields. No matter how aloof Sai City is, it's still a force. To maintain its operation, it can't only rely on a group of killers. The gap was really a little big. Li Tianlan, who was still thinking about the destructive power of 400 professional killers a moment ago, felt a little helpless when he heard Deep Dream's number. He looked around and suddenly asked, "How many people are here now?" "Very few." Deep Dream shook her head. "But Governor has issued a summon order. Most people will return to Mount Taibai before noon tomorrow. You can see them tomorrow, young Governor." Li Tianlan was silent for a moment, nodded, and repeated, "Tomorrow." "Well. Tomorrow." Deep Dream gave him a strange look but didn't say anything. She took Li Tianlan to a small, shabby palace and whispered, "His Highness and Deputy Governor are inside." "I won't go in. Deputy Governor never lets us in." Li Tianlan answered and knocked on the door. "Come in. Situ Sanyue is quiet." A voice rang out from within the palace. Deep Dream stood motionless outside the palace, but her eyes were fixed on the interior of the palace. She was a little curious and obviously wanted to know what was inside. Li Tianlan thought for a moment, then pushed the door open and walked in. The palace was very small. The interior decorations were ridiculously simple. The small palace only had 2 floors. However, the second floor was completely sealed off. There was only a bed in the living room and nothing else. The hall was empty. Only the hard bed was there. Li Tianlan didn't even see any sofas, tables, or chairs in the hall. There was not even a single light in the hall. Under the curtain of night, in the darkness, the palace was so quiet that it seemed like a deserted place. Li Tianlan stood in the darkness and was completely speechless for a while. An empty palace and a small bed. When all of this was combined together, it actually brought him an indescribable shock. This was Tribulation's residence in Sai City. He was the deputy governor of Sai City. Throughout the year, for many years, he spent most of his time in this palace. 1 year, 5 years, or even 10 years. Except for Situ Sanyue, no one in Sai City had ever entered this palace, and no one would know what it looked like. It was like Tribulation's own world that he carefully guarded. It was empty, cold, and dark. Li Tianlan didn't feel lonely in it, but he clearly felt a kind of silence, as if his heart was dead. In silence, Li Tianlan took 2 steps forward. In front of the hard bed, Situ Sanyue, dressed in white, stood there, motionless. Tribulation lay on the bed, breathing weakly and also motionless. Li Tianlan hesitated for a moment, then broke the silence in front of him and whispered, "How is Marshal Uncle's injury?" "It's not getting better, nor is it getting worse." Situ Sanyue sighed softly. "I really don't know when he will wake up." Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and seemed to hesitate again. "What do you want to say?" Situ Sanyue turned to look at him. The light in the palace was so dim that Li Tianlan couldn't see Situ Sanyue's expression. "I'm thinking if I should take Marshal Uncle to Tiannan. In the Wang family of Beihai, the Nalan family will send someone to treat him. If Marshal Uncle is there, the possibility of recovery will be greater." Li Tianlan told the truth. "The Physician King family?" Situ Sanyue raised her eyebrows. Li Tianlan nodded and said nothing. "Okay." Situ Sanyue thought for a while and nodded. "I'll arrange it. I'll send him to Tiannan in a few days." "Okay." Li Tianlan nodded. "What do you think of Sai City?" Situ Sanyue glanced at her brother lying on the bed again, sighed tiredly, and asked casually. Li Tianlan walked to the bed in silence and looked at the silent snow outside the window. He didn't speak for a long time. Situ Tsangyue came over and looked at Li Tianlan's expression. Against the white snow, his expression looked a little gloomy but extremely calm. It was an indescribable depth. Situ Tsangyue's eyes were in a trance for a moment and she asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about a question." Li Tianlan said, "I'm the young governor of Sai City, but is Sai City still my Sai City now?" Chapter 667. Since becoming the young governor of Sai City, Li Tianlan and Situ Tsangyue had not seen each other many times. There were a lot of phone calls between them. Whether it was through video call or phone call, Li Tianlan was always reserved, quiet, and silent, with a little bit of unobvious but extremely sincere gratitude. No one expected that when Li Tianlan officially entered Sai City this time, there would be such a scene. Situ Tsangyue didn't expect it either. "Sai City, is it my Sai City?" In the darkness, Li Tianlan's voice was calm, but Situ Tsangyue could clearly feel the sharp power behind the calmness. This was definitely a sharp and somewhat domineering question. In the almost empty hall, tribulation lay there quietly. The darkness seemed to solidify, oppressive and heavy. Situ Tsangyue looked at Li Tianlan's side face and was silent for a long time. Now, Li Tianlan was really different from before. She couldn't tell when the change began. Earlier, maybe it was the moment when he stood up again on Lonely Mountain after the final battle of Heaven Capital. Maybe it was the transformation of traveling thousands of miles in 3 years. Maybe it was the moment when he defeated Wang Xingxiao, Gu Hanshan, Jiang Shanyu, and Song Ci together in the final maneuver. Or it was when the Snowdance Corps set foot in Eastern Europe under his leadership. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the Invincible Realm experts were crushed and killed by the general trend like nonentities. It was the moment when the eternal meteor in the sky above Mormons was completely extinguished. Or it was the moment when he swept all the way in Beihai and finally set foot on Mount Dibbing. When did the change begin? Maybe the change had been going on all the time. However, Situ Tsangyue ignored it. It seemed that everyone ignored it. On this day, Li Tianlan had been in the secular world for almost 4 years, but the time he stayed in the public eye was too little. His talent could be said to be astonishing, but his relatively weak strength always gave him a feeling of incomparable frailty when mixed in with the general trend. The Li family, the Wang family of Beihai, the Giant Group, the Samsara Palace, and Sai City. The final battle of Heaven Capital. The chaos of Eastern Europe. He had always been walking in the center of the general trend, but in the eye of the storm, there seemed to be a kind of power that had quietly shrouded him, causing his figure to become blurry. It was so blurry that he had almost left everyone's line of sight, so blurry that he did not even have much sense of existence. That kind of power was so subtle, yet it was everywhere. It was so careful, yet so affectionate. Situ Tsangyue naturally knew where that kind of power came from, or who it came from. She was a piece of darkness, like the most mysterious veil. She had dragged Li Tianlan into the general trend where the wind and waves were the fiercest, but she had always firmly protected him, silently bearing all the shadows that wanted to devour Li Tianlan. Until the chaos in Eastern Europe. That sword strike had illuminated the entire world of darkness, ending this era that belonged to the Sword Emperor, which was filled with countless grievances. The veil that shrouded and protected Li Tianlan was completely broken with the shadows all over the sky. Li Tianlan walked out of the darkness and appeared clearly in everyone's sight. There were no longer any shadows in his sky. It was clear and boundless, bright and splendid. It seemed that Li Tianlan had appeared in everyone's sight for the first time. The heavenly light shone on the spirit-locking platform. The silver moon fell on the North Sea. He swept across Mount Dibbing, swallowed thousands of miles, and was invincible. At this moment, the eyes of the whole world seemed to be focused on Li Tianlan. His figure was extremely dazzling in this era. This was his era. Situ Tsangyue suddenly had some doubts. She didn't understand whether Li Tianlan, who was so clear now, had always been like this, or he had slowly become like this. He had become so proactive. He took the initiative to come to Mount Dibbing and ask the sharpest question. At this moment, Situ Tsangyue seemed to be able to feel Li Tianlan's mood. It was a kind of initiative that tried to grasp everything in his hands. He didn't want to passively endure anything anymore. He wanted to be in charge of everything. He became ambitious, sensitive, paranoid, and overbearing. Situ Tsangyue thought quietly. In the silence, Li Tianlan had turned his eyes and his eyes fell on her face. Tian Yi had told him about the structure of the Purgatory of Heaven capital when he was in Tongtian. This was a super force that had been secretly developed for many years. Its structure was extremely complete, and there were only 5 main and core institutions. Immortality, Immortality, and Sunluo had now completely appeared in front of the dark world. They represented the most terrifying combat capability and explosive power of the Purgatory of Heaven capital. And hidden in the dark was Heaven's Fall and Heaven's Fall. Heaven's Fall was the top assassination organization. Heaven's Fall was the most detailed intelligence organization. Heaven's Fall Temple was Sai City. In the sequence of the Purgatory of Heaven capital, Situ Tsangyue was the master of Heaven's Fall Temple. Tian Yi once said that Heaven's Fall had been standing by Li Tianlan's side. But the Purgatory of Heaven capital had always been Li Guangtu's Purgatory of Heaven capital. And Situ Tsangyue was Li Guangtu's woman. Li Tianlan didn't want to doubt anything. He took the initiative to come to Sai City because he wanted to know Situ Tsangyue's attitude, as well as the attitude of the Heaven Fall Temple. As long as it was a clear attitude, any kind of attitude was okay. So he asked directly. Was Sai City still his Sai City? Situ Tsangyue laughed. It was a kind of extremely clean beauty, without the traces of time, as clear as the snow on Mount Taibai. She reached out and touched Li Tianlan's hair, scratched his scalp, and said with a smile, "Little Tianlan, you came to Mount Taibai, but we didn't greet you with great fanfare. Are you angry?" Li Tianlan was stunned for a moment, and his face suddenly became extremely embarrassed. "You are the young governor of Sai City. Coming here means going home. Have you ever seen anyone who needs to be greeted by his family when he comes home?" Situ Tsangyue continued. "I didn't mean that." Li Tianlan took a deep breath, turned his head to look out of the window, and was silent for a long time. His expression gradually calmed down. Sai City, Heaven Fall Temple, his voice was low and calm. Situ Tsangyue's body shook slightly for a moment, and she raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I am the young governor of Sai City. What am I to the Heaven Fall Temple?" He said slowly, "What am I to the entire Purgatory of Heaven capital?" Situ Tsangyue was silent for a long time. Then she sighed softly and did not speak. "I am grateful for what Sai City has done for me. I am grateful from the bottom of my heart." Li Tianlan whispered, "Auntie, I came here today to ask for an answer. Is Sai City mine or his? No matter what the answer is, I can accept it. Even if Sai City is not mine, we will not be enemies in the future." His. Li Tianlan didn't say who he was referring to, but Situ Tsangyue naturally knew. Situ Tsangyue smiled bitterly. She didn't want to answer such a question, and even instinctively resisted it. Her voice was a little helpless, and she whispered, "Why do you have to make it so clear?" "The Li family is my Li family," Li Tianlan said. He said this sentence firmly and unquestionably. The Li family was stubborn. It was not only Li Guangtu who was stubborn. Now the Li family was his, and it didn't belong to anyone else. "It's his, and it's yours. Why do you do this?" "He is still recuperating in Yuzhou. When he wakes up, you can have a good talk. If the Li family is temporarily supported by him, you will be much more relaxed, and..." Before Situ Tsangyue finished her words, she had been interrupted by Li Tianlan. "There's nothing to talk about," he whispered. "I won't let him support the Li family, neither will Grandpa." "Why?" Situ Tsangyue asked. Li Tianlan looked at the snow outside the window. After a long silence, he said, "Because he doesn't deserve it." Li Tianlan. Li Guangtu. The Li family. In their eyes, they didn't deserve it. This sentence was as calm as he said it. He wanted to save Li Kuangtu and Mormons. He destroyed blue sky, underworld and falling stars. He called the master of Samsara Palace a bitch, and Lin Fengting was even injured. All these were to save Li Kuangtu. Because Li Kuangtu's surname was Li. That was all. Situ Tsanyue couldn't say a word for a long time. He didn't deserve it. She quietly thought about it and suddenly felt extremely sad. Li Tianlan said these two words very calmly, but behind that calmness, there was indeed a kind of calmness and indifference after suffering all kinds of grievances. Li Tianlan looked out of the window and whispered, "It's a beautiful place. I like it here." Situ Tsanyue smiled bitterly and didn't speak. Li Tianlan looked at her and waited for her answer. The answer is actually the most boring thing. Situ Tsanyue said slowly. But many answers are very important to me. Li Tianlan looked at Situ Tsanyue's face seriously. Situ Tsanyue was silent for a moment and said calmly, "I can't give you the answer you want, or even if I have the answer, it may not be what you want." Li Tianlan's heart sank for a moment, and he subconsciously glanced at tribulation in a coma. He didn't speak and waited quietly. "It's true that you are the young governor of Sai City." Situ Tsanyue said, "It's also true that he is the master of the purgatory of heaven capital. As for whether Sai City belongs to you or not, I can't answer this question." She said slowly, "You should go to Lin Hen and ask Senior Li." Li Tianlan froze for a moment and suddenly remembered that he seemed to have not contacted his grandfather recently. Even when he swept the entire Beihai province, he did not receive a call from Lin Hen. Situ Tsanyue didn't have the final say on the problem of Sai City. Li Honghe had the final say. This kind of answer was really boring. Li Tianlan was quiet for a moment. Just when Situ Tsanyue thought he had nothing to say, he suddenly said, "Auntie." Situ Tsanyue was a little confused. Li Tianlan turned his head and looked at her eyes seriously. The doubt in her eyes was genuine. "Do you have children?" Li Tianlan asked. Situ Tsanyue's eyes changed. She turned her head and said calmly, "No. I've actually checked a lot of information." Li Tianlan whispered, "My grandfather has a child, Li Kuangtu. I'm Grandpa's grandson." He whispered, "Li Kuangtu has had many women, but only 3 have been with him all the time. One is you, one is the Phantom Sword Master of Mount Shu, and the last one is Li Shi, who has been with him for the longest time. If my surname is really Li, I am the child of the Li family." He said slowly, "Li Kuangtu is my father." He looked at Situ Tsanyue and said, "You are not my mother, nor is Yunqinshi." In Situ Tsanyue's slightly changed expression, his voice sounded, "My mother is Li Shi?" Chapter 668. Li Shi was Li Tianlan's mother. If that was the case, that was really a sad story. Many years ago, the Li family was brilliant. Many years ago, Li Kuangtu was high-spirited. Many years ago, Zhuanyuantai was ambitious. Everything in that year, no matter how the Wang family of Beihai planned the treason case, no matter how insidious Kunlun City used, it was the sword that Li Shi stabbed into Li Kuangtu's chest that drew the final end to the treason case. The Li family fell from the clouds to the dust. This was a falling out between husband and wife. When the Li family declined, the purgatory of heaven capital was dormant, and Li Kuangtu was dormant. When Li Tianlan slowly walked up with the Li family on his back, it was the Samsara Palace that helped him block the countless killing intents of the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Kuangtu thought that Li Tianlan was not worthy of owning the Li family. Li Tianlan thought so too. Even if this was not a father and son killing each other, at least it was a very dark beginning. At the last moment of the final battle of heaven capital, when Li Tianlan forced himself into the invincible sword light, the woman who stabbed him in the heart was Li Shi. Li Kuangtu. Li Shi. Li Tianlan. If this was really a family of 3, how dark would their past and future be? Situ Tsanyue looked at Li Tianlan in silence. She looked at him pitifully and sympathetically. Li Tianlan stood there quietly, and there was only a kind of indifferent silence in his eyes. Is it true? He asked. I don't know. Situ Tsanyue told the truth. She really didn't know Li Tianlan's background. Perhaps many people knew that the Li family had a daughter who died young. But the problem was that no one had seen the child. No one knew if the child had really died. All the records of the hospital were erased. People knew that it was Li Shi's child. But whether it was a boy or a girl, whether it was alive or dead, or even how many children there were. There were similar camouflage tricks in the dark world almost every year. Who knew what was going on except those involved? Perhaps only Li Shi, Li Guangtu, and Li Honghe knew all this. Li Shi returned to Kunlun City and said that she had given birth to a daughter who had died young. With her strength at the peak of the invincible realm, her willingness to return was already loyal. How could Gu Xingyan ask anything else? Not to mention at that time, even now, Li Shi was the top expert in Kunlun City. Although Situ Tsanyue had been secretly cooperating with Li Honghe, she had never asked about such a thing, and Li Honghe had never mentioned it. So he really didn't know. Li Tianlan remained silent. He did not know the real answer. But all the signs indicated that this seemed to be the only answer. In the past 3 generations of the Li family, Li Honghe only had one son, Li Guangtu. Li Honghe was his grandfather, so it was self-evident who his father was. For this reason, since he came back from Eastern Europe, he had never contacted Li Honghe except for making a phone call to Linton. Li Shi. Li Shi, Li Tianlan smiled. How miserable. He said softly. The corners of Situ Tsanyue's mouth moved, but she did not speak. Just like Li Tianlan. She didn't know Li Tianlan's background, but at this time, she couldn't think of any other possibility. There's nothing we can't face. Situ Tsanyue was silent for a long time, and then said softly, Tianlan, after all, we are a family. Many things, even if it involves life and death, may be misunderstandings. After going back and talking to them, many knots may be untied. Even if your speculation is true, there must be a reason for it to happen. The reason is not important. Li Tianlan shook his head. I don't need any explanation. It's not important. I can go to Beihai and anywhere else. He pointed his finger forward and said with a chuckle, Auntie, what do you think that is? Situ Tsanyue looked along his palm. Mount Taibai was extremely quiet. The wind and snow surrounded the night, and the summer stars hung in the sky. They stood on the top of the mountain and looked down. The snow, the night, and the stars. As far as the eye could see, there were endless lights. Situ Tsanyue was in a daze, and her heart was in a mess. She suddenly found that it had been many years since she stood in such a position to look at Mount Taibai and the distance. What is that? Situ Tsanyue asked in a mess. The world. Li Tianlan's pupils were like burning flames, with a temperature that was enough to burn everything. My world. I don't care what happened before, and I don't care about my background. I think about these questions just because I need to tell myself that no matter who my parents are, the Li family is mine. He said quietly, no one can take away my things. He patted the windowsill and whispered, this place is also mine. Situ Tsanyue did not give him an answer. But he gave himself an answer. Everyone thought that what they believed in was the truth. So did Li Tianlan. Situ Tsanyue looked at him quietly for a long time. Vaguely, she seemed to perceive Li Tianlan's purpose of coming here. How are your injuries? Li Tianlan turned to look at Situ Tsanyue and asked softly. Not bad. Situ Tsanyue whispered, I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to recover my peak combat capability in a short time. After so many years, it's rare for me to rest and relax. Maybe I can make a breakthrough in martial arts if I relax my mind. A breakthrough. With Situ Tsanyue's current realm, if she made another breakthrough, she would be close to the peak of the invincible realm. I have a suggestion. Li Tianlan suddenly said. Situ Tsanyue looked at him quietly for a long time. Her eyes were extremely bright, as if she could see through Li Tianlan's heart. Go ahead. It was simple. Her voice was neither salty nor light. Li Tianlan turned his eyes away from Situ Tsanyue and said calmly, Auntie's injury is too serious, and Martial Uncle's injury can't be improved for the time being. After all, Mount Taibai is too cold. I want you to go to the south to recuperate for a period of time, and come back when your injury is better. The south? Situ Tsanyue tilted her head and looked at Li Tianlan with a faint smile. The south. Li Tianlan nodded. Tiannan? Situ Tsanyue asked. There was no disappointment or anger in her tone, but some complexity. If Auntie thinks Tiannan is too far, Jiangzhe is also fine. Li Tianlan said calmly. Tiannan was the territory that Li Tianlan was about to open up. And Jiangzhe. Although Li Honghe was in charge of Jiangzhe, the powerful figure who really controlled the overall situation of Jiangzhe was Zhou Yuanshan, the governor of Jiangzhe. In other words, these two places were under Li Tianlan's absolute control. What this meant was self-evident. What about Sai City after I leave? Situ Tsanyue sighed softly. Her hunch was extremely accurate. Although she was not angry, she still felt a little self-deprecating. Li Tianlan was silent for a while. He still did not look at Situ Tsanyue, but said calmly, Sai City will be fine. One of cool breeze and drifting cloud can be transferred back. In addition, I will communicate with Saint. When I am in Tiannan, he will take care of Sai City. He was talking about Saint. Not Wei Kunlun. Although the two identities were, it was just one person, but it had an unusual meaning. The latter was the sword master of Mount Shu. The former was the deputy palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace. How long can Saint take care of it? Situ Tsanyue looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. A long time. Li Tianlan said quietly. His voice was steady, and his expression was calm. But at this moment, in the darkness, he gave people a feeling of extreme coldness. Enough to take care of Martial Uncle's injury. Situ Tsanyue laughed. At this moment, she completely understood what Li Tianlan meant. If Wanjie's injury can't be healed, will I have to stay in the south for the rest of my life and never come back? Situ Tsanyue asked softly. Li Tianlan's hand grabbed the wooden windowsill. After a long time, he said lightly, the weather in the south is very good. Situ Tsanyue did not say much. She was Li Kuangtu's woman. Obviously, Li Tianlan did not trust her now. All the previous questions were just a foreshadowing. Li Tianlan already had his own plans in his heart. He was going to take her to the south. It was just a way of saying that she was under house arrest or recuperation. Now, he was the young governor of Sai City. With her departure, the power of Sai City would naturally be concentrated in his hands. Li Tianlan came to Sai City for the power of Sai City. And he was not going to return the power that he had taken away to Situ Tsanyue. It was still the same sentence. Li Tianlan did not trust her. He trusted Tribulation. Therefore, after Tribulation's injury was healed, he would become the real governor of Sai City. Situ Tsanyue did not know whether Li Tianlan had planned to do this before he knew the truth about the Heaven Parish Hall. But obviously, after knowing that the Heaven Parish Hall was Sai City and the power of the Li family, Li Tianlan, who had always thought that the Li family belonged to him, no longer hesitated to do these things. If he didn't trust them, he would take them away. No matter who they were. Suspicious, sensitive, straightforward, decisive, and cold. He was a real ambitious man. Situ Tsanyue's heart was a little complicated, but also indescribably gratified. Even if Li Tianlan was now clearly telling her that he was going to take away the power that belonged to her. I can listen to your arrangement, but you must know that I am different here than in the south. Situ Tsanyue said slowly, even if I have no combat capability, not many people dare to act rashly here. But if I leave, Tianlan, do you really understand the current situation? What do you mean, Auntie? Li Tianlan asked softly. Zhongzhou State and the Wang family of Beihai. Situ Tsanyue said calmly. It's not a good thing to be too independent. Li Tianlan's tone was indifferent. That's true. Situ Tsanyue said softly, but the Wang family of Beihai is used to being free. Who is willing to put shackles on their necks? So the next step must be the most intense game. Sai City in the north is the most important. Li Tianlan was silent. He suddenly remembered that at the beginning of the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Wang family of Beihai had obtained the military power of the Black Dragon army located in the northeast in the deal with the giant group, and even obtained the leadership of the Longjiang province. Today's Longjiang province could be said to be the world of the Wang family of Beihai. Combined with the current situation, could it be that Wang Tianzong had prepared for the worst before the chaos in Eastern Europe officially began? After signing the Flying Bird Agreement, Snow Country is already the territory of the Wang family of Beihai. Situ Tsanyue reminded him. North, Snow Country, Longjiang, Black Dragon Army. Beihai Province. The instantly connected information lit up Li Tianlan's mind like a bolt of lightning. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and asked, do they dare? Chapter 669. Before everything officially started, no one could answer Li Tianlan's question. But for anyone involved in the game, this was a question that they had to start thinking about seriously. Games needed skills. The bigger the situation involved, the more skills and even the real wisdom were needed. Advance and retreat, balance, compromise, and countless subtle details were enough to affect the outcome of the game. Li Tianlan knew what Zhongzhou State wanted to do. He also knew what the Wang family of Beihai wanted to do in the face of Zhongzhou State's actions. The key was whether they dared to do it or not. Not only the Wang family of Beihai. It also included Zhongzhou State. Did Zhongzhou State dare to do it? Did the Wang family of Beihai dare to do it? When the two sides really competed, every advance and retreat was tantamount to testing each other's bottom line. This was destined to be a very complicated and incomparably long process. But Li Tianlan, who could roughly guess Wang Tianzong's injury, was very clear that Zhongzhou State now had plenty of time. So the most critical question was whether the Wang family of Beihai dared to do it or not. It depends on what Zhongzhou does. Situ Tsanyue thought for a long time and then said calmly. Li Tianlan was silent. No one thought there was anything wrong with the change of the speaker of Longjiang province at that time. At that time, everyone thought it was the Wang family of Beihai's weakening of Sai City. Who could have thought that at that time, Wang Tianzong had already prepared for this? Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Do they have this strength? You can question anything. Situ Tsanyue said, but you absolutely can't question the strength of the Wang family of Beihai. Especially the comprehensive strength. This kind of super-rich family with hundreds of years of inheritance has experienced too many things. You alone swept Mount Dibbing and even almost got on the stage a formidable person. Although it is a shame, it may not be a big deal. At least in these hundreds of years, this is certainly not the most difficult time for the Wang family of Beihai. Such a family can survive so many ups and downs, their foundation can be said to be really unfathomable. In the past, no one who questioned the strength of the Wang family of Beihai would have a good end. She hesitated and slowly said, including Guangtu in those days. How high-spirited was Li Guangtu in those days? When victory was in his grasp, the Wang family of Beihai finally turned the tables. Perhaps many people did not like Li Guangtu, but no one dared to say that he was a fool. He was scheming, ambitious, and ready to make trouble. He thought that he had seen through everything of the Wang family of Beihai. What was the result? It was the Li family that fell from the clouds to the dust. The Wang family of Beihai still stood at the top and could not be shaken. Li Guangtu's failure might be due to his ambition, but it was definitely not due to his stupidity. He just didn't see the strength of the Wang family of Beihai clearly. They are indeed powerful. Li Tianlan nodded. He never denied it. The 200,000-strong army of the North Sea Legion was unstoppable. The thousands of people in the North Sea province were united. He still remembered that promise to His Majesty, Sword Emperor. But their strength might not be enough to support their actions. Don't forget how the North Sea province came to be. Situ Tsungyue said silently, even if you grew up on the border, Boss Li should have told you about the history of Zhongzhou State, right? History of Zhongzhou State. Li Tianlan froze for a moment. During the hundreds of years since the founding of the People's Republic, the history of Zhongzhou State was extremely exciting. The Wang family of Beihai had been described in history books countless times about their strength and foundation. Even many influential events were directly related to them. How did the North Sea province come to be? The North Sea province had 150,000 square kilometers of land and was the youngest province in Zhongzhou State. The history of the North Sea province could even be said to be the most exciting part in the history of Zhongzhou State, at least one of the most exciting parts. It was a legend about the Chosen One. Holy State of Beihai, Queen City, Floating Island City, Lioli City. With the Kanglan River as the boundary, it was the northern end of the North Sea province today. Before the founding of Zhongzhou State, it was also the land of Zhongzhou State, but after the founding, it was occupied by Snow Country. The Chosen One ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, who was still in the history books, united with the Rothschild family at that time and used all means to take this land back from Snow Country, forming half of the Wang family of Beihai today. The land of the three cities south of the Kanglan River, Kanglan, Tongtian, and Qiushui still belonged to East Island during that time. During that period, the Wang family of Beihai, which had completely gained a foothold, could be said to really look down on the world. In their most glorious period, there was not only the Chosen One ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, but also a brilliant figure whose combat capability was no weaker than his. That was the founder of Zhuanyuantai, and also Li Tianlan's founder. Those decades were incomparably glorious times. The light of the Wang family of Beihai shone on the whole dark world. The land that belonged to East Island was forcibly taken down by the two people and formed the present Wang family of Beihai until today. It was also an era full of deceit and games. At that time, the Wang family of Beihai had to face Snow Country, East Island, Zhongzhou State, and countless forces. At that time, the comprehensive strength of the Wang family of Beihai was not as good as it was now. But its high-end combat capability was far more than it was now. And most importantly, the current Wang family of Beihai did not need to face Snow Country. Their game with Zhongzhou State would be more naked. If the worst happens, what will the result be? Li Tianlan suddenly asked in a low voice. Who knows? Situ Tsungyue sighed softly, feeling a little tired. She looked at Li Tianlan and said, the task from the office of the president and the army headquarters should be coming soon. Whoever is here will take the task. Tianlan, are you sure you want me to go south? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows, and a touch of sharpness flashed through his eyes. Now the Wang family of Beihai had basically controlled the overall situation of Longjiang base city. Longjiang and Beihai faced each other across the sea. Now that the Black Dragon army was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai, the barrier of Longjiang province was in the hands of Beihai province. It was not until this moment that Li Tianlan understood why the Black Dragon army, which had been brought to Eastern Europe by Dongqing Wudi, had not returned home. It wasn't that the warriors of the Black Dragon army weren't trusted. It was because some of the leaders of the Black Dragon army had changed their stance. Had the situation become so sensitive? Li Tianlan thought silently. The current situation could even be said to be on the verge of breaking out. Him sweeping through the North Sea province was a clear signal. Zhongzhou State's action against Beihai would begin soon. No one would think of destroying Beihai, but as the world's most powerful country, in the face of the Wang family of Beihai's repeated criticism, even if it was unconsciously, they could not tolerate it. Now with this opportunity, Zhongzhou State would definitely take action to weaken the autonomy and independence of the Wang family of Beihai. Beihai province was a province, and could only be a province. Not the Beihai family. Nor was it a certain country. Undoubtedly, the Wang family of Beihai could not tolerate such a situation. They would fight and play, but Zhongzhou state was powerful. If Beihai really couldn't stand it, what would they do? Would they grit their teeth and compromise? Or would they grit their teeth and resist? Zhongzhou state was afraid of the Wang family of Beihai's resistance. And the Wang family of Beihai also knew that their final resistance was their biggest trump card. Longjiang was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Liaodong, where Sai City was located, was connected to Longjiang and Snow Country. Snow Country had now become a puppet in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Once the Wang family of Beihai really went crazy, more than 200,000 troops of the Beihai Corps would sweep through the Longjiang province and enter Liaodong in an instant. If Snow Country was willing to cooperate, it could completely destroy Sai City, join with the Beihai Corps, and sweep through Guangdong from Liaodong. How large was the area of the three northeastern provinces? It was 800,000 square kilometers. It was as large as several Beihai, larger than the land area of most countries in the world. Once the Wang family of Beihai fell out with Zhongzhou state, they could even establish a country after controlling the three northeastern provinces. And it would be a real, veritable big country. Zhongzhou state could not allow such a thing. But the Wang family of Beihai also had a trump card. Zhongzhou state was a country with nuclear weapons. And as a part of Zhongzhou state, the Wang family of Beihai was also a province with nuclear weapons. And nuclear weapons were under the control of the Wang family of Beihai. The number of nuclear weapons in Beihai might not be enough to destroy the world, but if it was really a life and death struggle, it was enough to destroy most of the territory of Zhongzhou state. Corpses were everywhere, blood flowed like a river, and it was a purgatory on earth. Everyone could clearly see this problem. So such a game was destined to be extremely dangerous. Neither Zhongzhou state nor Beihai wanted to go to this step. This also doomed this game to be a long time. But in difficult times, Zhongzhou state also had to fight. Especially when Zhongzhou state clearly felt this kind of danger, Zhongzhou state had to go up. To control the nuclear weapons of the Wang family of Beihai. This was the bottom line of Zhongzhou state. But on the other hand, this was also the bottom line of the Wang family of Beihai. In such a situation, in order to avoid the worst result, Sai City, with its special position, was bound to bear an unimaginable burden. Such a Sai City had even become a place of contention for military power. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and whispered, "If this is the case, you and Marshal Uncle shouldn't stay here." Situ Tsanyue was stunned. "Go to the south," Li Tianlan said. Situ Tsanyue's eyes quietly warmed for a moment. When she proposed to go to the south before, it was because Li Tianlan didn't trust her. But now, he proposed it because he cared about her. Situ Tsanyue smiled and whispered, "Okay." She paused and continued, "But you can't be careless. It's hard for Wanjie to recover from his injury, and Saint can't stay in Sai City. If you are in Tiannan, how should Sai City deal with itself? You should think about it. If the Wang family of Beihai goes crazy and this place becomes a breakthrough, the future of the Li family, it's okay." Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said quietly, "Even if Marshal Uncle can't recover for the time being, even if you and Saint are not here, even if I am in Tiannan, Sai City is still invincible." In the dark, Li Tianlan stretched out his palm. An incomparably dazzling and resplendent rainbow light suddenly bloomed from his palm. The sword intent all over the sky rolled up the flying snow outside the window in an instant, extremely messy. Situ Tsanyue tightened her body completely out of instinct. Her eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan's palm. A small sword with a brilliant color and an incomparably exquisite and perfect shape spun continuously in his hand. Indifferent, proud, and awe-inspiring. At this moment, Li Tianlan almost had no sense of existence. But this spinning little sword brought Situ Tsanyue a kind of unparalleled danger. Li Tianlan's palm moved. The little sword spinning in his palm rose in an instant, bringing up flying snow all over the sky. The shining sword energy of thousands of meters tore the night sky. It was like a long rainbow. The dazzling sword light crossed the whole Sai City, kept flying, and finally landed at the end of Sai City. It stood straight in the snow, facing the direction of Snow Country, becoming more and more quiet and proud. This is the startling sword. It will protect Sai City and the north end of Zhongzhou State on our behalf. Li Tianlan said. The 13th floor. Startling sword. Situ Tsangyue looked at him quietly, her eyes extremely complicated. At this moment, her mind was full of the words that Deep Dream brought to her after returning from Yuzhou. The silver moonlight moved Beihai. Startling sword shone on Zhongzhou State. She didn't expect that the first sword of the second sentence would land here. The most suitable place. Chapter 670. At dusk, Qin Weibai sent off the last group of guests of Prince Yang's mansion with a smile and elegantly gathered the hair on her forehead. She wore a dignified and simple light-colored cheongsam, and her once loose black hair was tied into a ponytail. She stood in front of the gate of the ancient prince's mansion without any makeup, facing the approaching dusk. She was indifferent, but with an indescribable beauty and holiness. That touch of white, which had once filled the dark world, was aloof, cold, and powerful. Now it seemed that she really came to the world for the first time. Because she was willing, the mystery began to disappear little by little, but the calm and even wise temperament became more and more perfect. She just stood there. She was graceful, quiet and calm, elegant and delicate, and calm. She had skin of ice and bones of jade, a fairy-like appearance, and was extremely beautiful and peerless. From inside to outside, she had no shortcomings. The afterglow of the setting sun devoured the remaining light between heaven and earth. Less than 10 meters behind Qin Weibai, Flaming Fire stood there, looking at the perfect back with extremely cold eyes. Flaming Fire woke up yesterday, when Li Tianlan officially left Beihai and entered Liaodong from Longjiang to Sai City. Her extremely weak breath was actually not seriously injured. It could even be said that she was one of the least injured invincible realm experts in the chaos of Eastern Europe. As many outsiders guessed, Flaming Fire just woke up and went to Qin Weibai's side. Although she didn't have much combat power for the time being, her attitude seemed to have fully demonstrated that she was still loyal to Qin Weibai. But no one knew that Flaming Fire had never said a word to Qin Weibai since she came to her side. The dim yellow light in the sky gradually disappeared. At the moment when day and night alternated, a gust of wind blew over Prince Yang's mansion. The autumn wind went all the way north, rolling up the flowers, plants, and green leaves in the prince's mansion. Flaming Fire raised her head and glanced at it expressionlessly. The space was twisting and deforming quietly. All the way forward, she passed by Flaming Fire without most people in the prince's mansion noticing. The autumn wind between heaven and earth stopped beside Flaming Fire for a moment. Flaming Fire nodded indifferently. As if she had said hello, the autumn wind gradually dissipated, leaving no trace. Qin Weibai turned around and happened to see Flaming Fire nodding. She smiled and took the initiative to say, "Is he here?" Flaming Fire glanced at her and nodded. Then closed the door. Qin Weibai's voice was soft and unhurried, with a hint of exhaustion. "I won't be seeing any guests today." The Prince of Yang's residence had guests every day. From the day Li Tianlan destroyed the Tang family in Yuzhou but Zhongzhou State remained silent, the first group of guests came to visit. Heavenly Light Spirit Lock Platform. More and more people came to the Prince of Yang's residence, and their statuses grew higher and higher. It had only been 2 days since Li Tianlan left Mount Dibing, and the people who came to Prince Yang's mansion almost had to line up. It was impossible for them not to know that they couldn't see Li Tianlan here. But they all scrambled to come here to show their attitude, and at the same time, brought valuable gifts. It was impossible for her to satisfy everyone, but she tried her best not to disappoint them. Her methods were calm and natural. It was the first time for most people to see this famous goddess. She was not cold and aloof, nor was she arrogant and detached from the crowd. Her every move could be said to be impeccable. Although everyone who left did not get the promise Qin Weibai made on behalf of Li Tianlan, most of them gained something. As more and more people came to visit, Qin Weibai's name gradually spread, so more uneasy people began to come to visit her. In just a few days' time, Qin Weibai's name had been spread out, so more people began to visit her with uneasiness. In just a few days, many people already knew that Prince Yong's mansion had a beautiful but good-tempered hostess who was easy to get along with. Flaming Fire witnessed all this in one day. Her eyes were getting colder and colder. Seeing that Qin Weibai was about to close the door, she suddenly said, "Don't close the door." The decision that had been hesitating for a long time seemed to become clear and certain at this moment. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm leaving." Qin Weibai was stunned and looked at Flaming Fire. She was silent for a while, then chuckled, "Isn't it good to stay with me? I don't want to be a shadow anymore." Flaming Fire said quietly, "And I can't keep up with your pace." "It's the same." Qin Weibai said calmly, "It's the same." "It's not the same." Flaming Fire's voice was full of persistence. "You know it yourself. It's obviously the same." Qin Weibai's voice was also full of persistence. Flaming Fire did not speak. This question was actually meaningless. Whether it was the same or not, in her heart, it was different. Then it was different. "I'm leaving," she said. In fact, she could have left Yuzhou when she had just woken up. However, coming here first and then leaving was completely different from leaving without saying goodbye. Coming here first and then leaving, at least Qin Weibai could have an explanation to the outside world. As long as Flaming Fire did not deny it, this explanation was true. Flaming Fire did not want to deny anything. She did not care what others thought. She only cared about one thing. That was different. He was truly different. Flaming Fire raised her head and looked at the lights under the night sky. Suddenly, she felt that the whole world was so strange. It was as if she had lost her pillar. She lost her direction and felt a little lonely. Qin Weibai's voice rang out, "Where are you going?" Flaming Fire was silent for a long time. After all, she still remembered a lot of things. She remembered that she often got up early to collect morning dew for her boss. She remembered the coffee she made for her boss in the middle of the night. She remembered the fruit she cut for her boss. She remembered the two of them flying all over the world. They met different people and encountered different dangers. She remembered the first time they met. She remembered that she told her about Li Tianlan with a smile. She talked about destiny and the past, but she did not talk about the future. There was no future. There would be no more. Flaming Fire's eyes were red. The suffocating pain in her heart twisted, with a kind of tearing feeling. She said it was the same. Maybe it was the same. But how could it be the same? In the night, Flaming Fire quickly raised her hand and said in a hoarse voice, "Go to Northern Europe." Most of the time, she was Flaming Fire. Most of the time, she was also the master of Samsara Palace. No matter who she was, when the pillar in her heart collapsed, she finally remembered Northern Europe. In that chaos, there was a man who had silently loved her for many years. The man was willing to throw out the murderous weapon to protect Li Tianlan for the will of herself and Samsara Palace, and he was seriously injured. Northern Europe was now in turmoil. The dark nights were surging with undercurrents. Flaming Fire felt that it was necessary to sort out his dark nights for him when she lost her direction. She walked out of the door and looked back at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai stood inside the door, surrounded by a flourishing field of flowers and plants. The light of the street lamps outside the prince's mansion fell on Flaming Fire. It seemed warm, but it was extremely cold. The inside and outside the door seemed to be separated into two worlds by the bleak autumn. It was the past and the future, or something else. "Goodbye," Flaming Fire said softly. Her voice paused, and then she said, "It's better not to see you again. You know why the guests come these days, and you know why there are so many guests today." Qin Weibai said, because Tianlan fought through the whole Beihai. In this era, he is almost invincible. Because of Emperor Dong's palace, because Wei Kunlun, a new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou State, is the palace master of Emperor Dong's palace, and because of you, you are also an invincible realm expert. Now in everyone's mind, there are 3 invincible realm experts in Emperor Dong's palace. You stay, and we will strengthen Emperor Dong's palace together. Isn't it good? Maybe it's good. Flaming Fire was silent for a long time, and then she said softly, but after that sword move in Eastern Europe, all this has nothing to do with me. Qin Weibai's eyes calmed down, becoming deep and bright. She asked her to stay. Flaming Fire refused. This was the truth. The truth could not be changed. So she nodded. So, then, goodbye. Anyway, she laughed. You are a very good assistant, no, the best assistant. Thank you for taking care of me. Flaming Fire's eyes suddenly became cold, and even a little angry. I don't need your thanks. She stared into Qin Weibai's eyes and said word by word. There's no difference. Qin Weibai sighed softly and looked at Flaming Fire. There was understanding, sympathy, and a trace of sadness in her eyes. You know better than anyone that it's the same, exactly the same. Is it the same? Flaming Fire's eyes became excited. She tried to smile, but it was extremely cold and even a little sad. You always think it's the same? So you can enjoy that fools love and care for you with a clear conscience, enjoy everything in the future, command military counselor and saint with a clear conscience, be yourself with a clear conscience, and even say thank you to me with a clear conscience? Qin Weibai looked at her quietly for a long time. Flaming Fire stood there straight, looking at Qin Weibai, and persistently waiting for her answer. Her answer was so powerful and so true, but for Flaming Fire, it was so heartbreaking. It all belongs to me. Why can't I feel at ease? Qin Weibai asked. This was her answer. Flaming Fire could not refute anything. Therefore, she could only stand there and keep sneering. She remembered a lot of things. Memories were like knives, cutting everything in the past with the cruelest strength and indifference. All the past was fragmented. It was all hers. Why couldn't she feel at ease? What was she obsessed with? It all belonged to her. Maybe I haven't done well enough. I can accept questions from any aspect. Even if you are in Northern Europe, you can also question what I will do next. Qin Weibai whispered, but there is one thing that none of you can question me. She looked at Flaming Fire proudly, cold and strong. Flawless. What belongs to me is mine. This is a fact. You can't question it. She looked at Flaming Fire and whispered, because you are not qualified. Climax. Chapter 671. The autumn wind in the twilight blew through the mansion and opened the antique door of the main hall of the mansion. Wisps of sword chi that did not seem strong but were extremely dense spread out in the main hall, silently covering the entire path from the main hall to the prince's mansion. In the main hall, Saint, who was meditating, opened his eyes. Looking at the autumn wind in the darkness, he nodded. His sword intent was still extending forward, gentle but incomparably resolute. You don't trust her? A light and gentle voice suddenly sounded in the autumn wind. The space, which had been wrinkled by the wind, became calm again. Military counselor, who was dressed in black, walked out of the darkness and walked to the bedside. The window beside the bed was half closed. Through a small gap, military counselor stood there, looking at the blurry figures of Qin Weibai and Flaming Fire in the distance. This scene was a little wretched. But military counselor was watching with great concentration. Who? Saint asked. It was not that he knew the answer, but he really did not know who the military counselor was asking about. Military counselor was silent for a while. He did not seem to know who he was referring to. After a long time, Flaming Fire walked out of the gate of the mansion. Flaming Fire is trustworthy. Military counselor said slowly, his voice a little complicated. Of course I know that. Saint laughed at himself and said, but now she is courting death. Even if Flaming Fire is trustworthy, it is inevitable that she will be impulsive. If she really takes action, she really doesn't know martial arts. Military counselor did not speak. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Samsara Palace could be said to have been completely destroyed. Less than 1/10 of the combatants survived. Most of them died in the strangulation of Mormons. More than half of the 12 super masters died, and so did the master of the Samsara Palace. Now, in their small group, perhaps only military counselor could really understand Flaming Fire's feelings. Because they were the ones who would never betray him. Flaming Fire wants to leave. What do you think? Military counselor suddenly asked. Saint was a little surprised. Did she contact you? What's the connection between something that's already destined? Military counselor shook his head. Do you really think she can stay here now? Saint was silent for a long time before he said slowly, it's good that he left. The outside world won't know this news for the time being. Flaming Fire will cooperate with our publicity. For a short time, just treat her as an invincible realm expert hiding in the dark. Military counselor said. Saint nodded in acknowledgement. How's your realm? Military counselor suddenly asked. Saint was stunned for a moment and then said, no problem. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the general trend was intertwined. In that chaotic situation, the breakthrough of Saint was actually very urgent, but he had accumulated enough experience over the years, so his breakthrough could be said to be natural. Now, as long as he could stabilize his realm, he could go all the way up in the shortest time possible. His real combat capability could even catch up with the peak of the invincible realm. Dongsheng Huangtu's notebook did give him great inspiration. The sword energy of the current Nirvana Sword Master was thicker than before. It could be said that it had already surpassed the swordsmanship of Mount Shu. But the only problem was that it also took time to completely stabilize the realm of the invincible realm. The saints didn't know how long they would need, but at least for now, they didn't lack time. In the darkness, Flaming Fire's somewhat excited question came faintly along with the night wind. Military counselor and Saint stopped talking. He did not show himself either. Both of them just quietly observed the confrontation between Flaming Fire and Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai's voice was calm and composed. Just as Flaming Fire said. He felt at ease. They heard Qin Weibai's final answer. You don't have the qualifications. The two of them were speechless. Flaming Fire was also speechless. In the long silence, Flaming Fire didn't say anything. She slowly turned around and slowly disappeared outside the door of the prince's mansion under the cold autumn light. Qin Weibai stood there alone, but she looked more and more perfect and firm. She's right. Saint suddenly said, we're not qualified. And, it's always the same. Military counselor stood in front of the window and watched Qin Weibai turn around and walk over. He remained silent and did not speak. The ubiquitous sword intent in the prince's mansion slowly disappeared. Qin Weibai walked in steadily. Her expression didn't change at all. Her calm aura was drowned in the darkness the moment she entered the door. She frowned slightly. Brighten up. She said slowly. Military counselor, who showed his true face, was here. Naturally, the lights in the main hall couldn't be turned on. Saint gently flicked his fingers, and a clear sword light lit up in the darkness. The faint light illuminated a small area. Qin Weibai sat on the sofa in the middle of the light. After a moment of silence, she asked, what's the matter? What's your plan for the future of Tianlan? Military counselor asked casually after a moment of silence. Qin Weibai glanced at military counselor coldly and said calmly, don't test me. Tianlan doesn't need any arrangement for the future. We should all remember our positions. I'm his woman. You're his subordinates. We're not qualified to arrange anything for him. We're by his side. In the future, we'll follow him. That's all. Don't you understand this? Military counselor took a deep breath and smiled. I understand. But there are still some things that need to be said. The Wang family of Beihai today. Do you have any idea about Wang Tianzong's injury? Military counselor asked. Qin Weibai really didn't understand martial arts. But to some extent, she could be said to be the person who knew the sword move in Eastern Europe the best. Knowing that sword move, she should be able to roughly judge Wang Tianzong's injury. Qin Weibai thought about it seriously and said hesitantly, if there's no accident, his injury can't recover in 3 to 5 years. This is the best situation. The worst situation was needless to say. Either Wang Tianzong died directly or his injury would be difficult to heal for the rest of his life. 3 to 5 years, military counselor murmured to himself. Have you heard any rumors? Saint suddenly asked. With the current position of the Wang family of Beihai and some of the things they did in Eastern Europe, there were indeed some rumors in the high level of Zhongzhou state, but it was hard to know whether they were true or not. From this aspect, it seemed that Zhongzhou state could not make up its mind. Rumors? Military counselor laughed. Today, I've received calls from 9 council members, and they're all talking about the same thing. Is this considered a rumor? Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes. Saint's face changed slightly. There were only 9 council members in the Zhongzhou State Parliament. They could be said to be the real giants with the most power and strength in Zhongzhou State, representing the will of the entire Zhongzhou State. Within one day, all 9 giants called military counselor? What did this mean? Including those in the southeast? Saint frowned and asked calmly. Of course. Military counselor nodded. He paused and continued, including summer solstice. Qin Weibai rubbed her white forehead and said softly, what's the position of those in the southeast? Of course it's the position of the southeast. Military counselor said blandly, although there are problems inside the Wang family of Beihai, in this respect, their cohesion is still extraordinary. Their cohesiveness is extraordinary, and they all hope to get my support. Of course, their words won't be so obvious, but their intentions are there. Qin Weibai and Saint looked at each other and did not speak. Military counselor's public identity and relationship with the Wang family of Beihai could be said to be very good. Although they were not strategic partners, several times of cooperation between them had always been quite pleasant. If military counselor was not military counselor and really chose to support the Wang family of Beihai, it was enough to make the entire Zhongzhou state restless and even afraid to take action. Those council members in the southeast hoped military counselor to support the Wang family of Beihai, and the council members of several other groups also called military counselor on the same day, naturally to test military counselor's attitude. The game between Zhongzhou state and the Wang family of Beihai might be extremely tragic, or it might be light. But in any case, before the official start, both Zhongzhou state and the Wang family of Beihai hoped to win the support of a few super heavyweight top figures with extraordinary status. Military counselor was naturally one of them, and it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the most important one. There was no doubt that military counselor saw an opportunity. Support Zhongzhou state, support Beihai, or be neutral. No matter what kind of attitude, with careful planning, it was promising. Although Samsara Palace had been destroyed, it was obvious that military counselor still wanted to seize this opportunity to set off a general trend similar to the chaos in Eastern Europe or the final battle of Heaven capital. Although Samsara Palace had been destroyed, with their current strength, it was not impossible. Now they needed to discuss how to operate and what they could get in the end. Qin Weibai pondered and did not speak for a long time. What ideas do you have? Saint suddenly asked. If military counselor did not have enough ability, it would be too unworthy of his code name. Moreover, after the chaos in Eastern Europe, Saint became the sword master of Mount Shu and appeared in everyone's sight. Qin Weibai came to Li Tianlan's side. On the contrary, military counselor controlled most of their remaining or deliberately protected forces. He was a steady man. If he did not have a general idea, it was impossible for him to come to them and tell them these things. We can push it behind the scenes. Military counselor said slowly, I told Tianlan more than 3 years ago that the whole world is looking for the headquarters of Samsara Palace, but no one knows that the real headquarters of Samsara Palace is in Zhongzhou State. He said slowly. Obviously, he was also thinking carefully. At present, the power in my hands is enough. Do you want to flip the cards? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Samsara Palace still had countless trump cards in Zhongzhou State, big and small, densely packed. Only military counselor, who was absolutely trusted by the master of Samsara Palace, could hold all these trump cards in his hands and operate them in an orderly manner. Once these cards were flipped, it was enough to set off an unimaginable storm inside Zhongzhou State. Yes. Military counselor's voice was very calm. It's too early. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows. Tell me your reason. I'm tired. Military counselor smiled. If these cards are flipped, it will be enough for the Li family to have the influence of its peak in an instant. I don't think it's too early now. Qin Weibai was silent. He was tired. This was the reason given by military counselor. She did not know whether such a reason was true or not, but it did not matter. The most important thing was that even if it was true, the reason why he was tired was that there was one less person. Just like Flaming Fire wanted to leave. Military counselor and Flaming Fire. They were both tired. In other words, no matter how persistent they were, no matter how real they were. In their hearts, after all, it was still different. It was really different. That was why they felt tired. Chapter 672. Qin Weibai sat on the sofa. Saint's sword radiance emitted a faint light, illuminating a small piece of darkness. She bathed in the light and was lost in thought for a long time. It seemed that she had not been as powerless as she was now for many years. Since the establishment of Samsara Palace, it had been an organization with a strong purpose. It could even be said to be an organization with only one purpose. From the beginning to the end. What everyone in Samsara Palace tried to do was to create a sky without shadows. All the plans, all the calculations, and a large number of trump cards came to an end in Mormon's eternal sword. Samsara Palace collapsed. After that, the plan was blank. But even so, Samsara Palace still had a lot of power that had not been exposed and was controlled by military counselor. It didn't need a plan. Everyone knew that once military counselor used these trump cards, the Li family supported by them could definitely become the top force in Zhongzhou State in an instant and even recover to its peak glory. But there was a premise for all this. Such power was the power in military counselor's hands and the power of Samsara Palace. But this was not the power of the Li family. Li Tianlan firmly believed that the Li family was his. The remaining small group of Samsara Palace also firmly believed in this. But those trump cards had been buried for too long, so there were countless variables hidden inside. How to smoothly transfer this power to Li Tianlan's hands and let them really accept Li Tianlan and the Li family's leadership was the question that military counselor should think about most now. And how far Li Tianlan could go also depended on his future achievements and development. So Qin Weibai felt that it was still too early. Li Tianlan had not yet broken through to the invincible realm. He had the combat capability of the invincible realm, but his real combat capability had surpassed the ordinary invincible realm experts. With the dragon vein, after the chaos in Eastern Europe, the dragon vein on his back had completely recovered. Zhongzhou State was thriving, and Li Tianlan was making progress almost all the time. The sword formation of the 13-story buildings had almost integrated with him. Under such circumstances, no one knew how terrible Li Tianlan would be in the future. Who dared to guess what Li Tianlan would do in 3 years? What would happen in 5 years? This was what Qin Weibai had been looking forward to the most. This shadowless sky completely belonged to Li Tianlan. No force could put pressure on him or suppress him. The foundation of the emperor in Tiannan had begun to take shape. The right time, place, and people were all in place. This is destined to be the fastest development of Emperor Dong's palace. It was the craziest few years of the world. 3 to 5 years later, both Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace would become extremely powerful. In Qin Weibai's expectation, that would also be the most appropriate time. Both Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace had made convincing achievements. Military counselor revealed all the trump cards in his hands and sent the Li family back to its former peak. In the face of the incomparably powerful Li Tianlan, those hidden trump cards naturally knew how to choose. But now, the military counselor felt that it was time. Obviously, he wanted to take advantage of Li Tianlan's attack on the entire Beihai to use his power to set off a storm that was extremely favorable to the Li family in the game between Zhongzhou State and Beihai. Such a plan might not be considered hasty. But the timing was not perfect. It was impossible for the military counselor not to know this. But his reason was simple and powerful. He was tired. This was also the reason that made Qin Weibai feel the most powerless. To some extent, military counselor and flaming fire were the same. They might not be tired, but after the sword stroke in Eastern Europe, they had lost their direction. Qin Weibai could not stop flaming fire. She could not stop military counselor either. Just as she said to flaming fire. No one was qualified to question her. But she was also not qualified to restrain them. She fully understood this feeling. It was probably the feeling of being disheartened. Qin Weibai also felt a little disheartened. She felt that everything was the same. This feeling was extremely real and rational. Nothing could deny it. But both flaming fire and military counselor felt that it was different. This was their own insistence. Do you not recognize me or Tianlan? Qin Weibai asked. There was no need to ask this question. The tragic ending of Samsara Palace today was all because of Li Tianlan. But this was something that was destined when Samsara Palace was established. This kind of unequal thing, at least in their hearts, was nothing. Everyone felt that Li Tianlan's growth and future were worthy of Samsara Palace's efforts. Otherwise, Saint would not have joined Samsara Palace and become a deputy palace master. You think too much. Military counselor's voice was very sincere. His attitude was not as intense as flaming fire's, but it was also extremely firm. These years, I'm really a little tired. In fact, a long time ago, I thought about the days after retirement. That's the day I've always longed for. These things at present can be said to be my last task. It's unnecessary. Everything in my hands will be handed over to Tianlan. I will handle this matter well. How are you going to make use of this opportunity? Saint asked. The upcoming game between Zhongzhou State and Beihai was destined to involve the overall situation. Being in the game, this was an opportunity for everyone. Would the 800,000 square kilometers of territory in the northeast become the real foundation for the Wang family of Beihai to flourish, or would it become the springboard for Zhongzhou State to completely take over Beihai province? This was bound to be a question that everyone would pay close attention to. At this moment, a person suddenly came to Saint's mind. Dongqing Wudi's wife, by Qingxian. She was transferred from Qinzhou to Liaodong more than 3 years ago to serve as the speaker of Liaodong, and that was shortly after Qin Weibai contacted the Dongqing clan. So, was this move the Samsara Palace's foresight or the Dongqing clan's foresight? Longjiang, Liaodong, Guangdong. When the Wang family of Beihai occupied the general trend of Longjiang, once the chaos broke out, Liaodong would be the first to bear the brunt. How would the military counselor make use of this opportunity? I think it won't be long before the higher-ups of Zhongzhou State send out a clear signal. Beihai and Zhongzhou State, such a game can't have a winner or loser in a short time. Once the game starts, there are opportunities everywhere. We should find the most suitable entry point for us now. Military counselor said slowly. Qin Weibai's mind was in a mess. She didn't think much about it and said subconsciously, the game hasn't started yet. How would you know what the entry point is? Military counselor and Saint looked at her at the same time. We don't know. Military counselor answered her question, but this game is like a point that leads to different endings. This is something that is destined to happen. As for the process, it can be created. We don't need to know the whole process. What we need to discuss is what kind of entry point we need to create in this process. What she could create was naturally the most certain. Qin Weibai was silent for a long time. Saint and military counselor stopped talking. After a long time, Qin Weibai sighed tiredly and said softly, Tianlan is coming back. We'll discuss this when he comes back. Military counselor frowned and was about to speak. Qin Weibai's cell phone rang. She took out her cell phone and answered it. After listening for a while, she put down the phone with a strange look. What's wrong? Saint asked aloud. There's news from the hospital. Qin Weibai frowned slightly. Li Guangtu woke up. Chapter 673. When he struggled to sit up from the hospital bed, Li Guangtu's consciousness was in a blank state for a long time. The hospital at night was quiet. His bed was near the window. In the sky by the window, the silver moon hung high, and the cold and bright light enveloped him. Everything in his sight seemed to be in a trance. He opened his eyes and stared blankly out of the window, not moving for a long time. It seemed that a nurse who was making ward rounds late at night came in, and then rushed out in surprise. Li Guangtu had been sitting there, not speaking, not moving, and even without any thoughts. His figure gradually merged with the moonlight and became extremely indifferent. The doctor rushed to the ward at the first time and carefully seemed to want to check his physical condition. A hazy and almost weak sword light appeared around the figure shrouded in moonlight. The sword light, which had no lethality at all, seriously injured 2 doctors on the spot. The ward was completely quiet. Under the moonlight, blood flowed down Li Guangtu's body. The sword intent that had just been forcibly released directly affected the injury in his body. The severe pain and tearing feeling spread from every part of his body. Li Guangtu, who was a little sluggish, finally frowned and looked down at his bleeding body. Thinking and consciousness began to return with the pain. Li Guangtu took a deep breath and turned his eyes. The sound of the instruments in the ward was still ringing. The ward he was in was not a single room. Less than 5 meters away from him, there was an extremely delicate and beautiful figure lying on the ground, unconscious. Her long black hair was scattered on the white bed sheets. She lay there motionlessly, so quiet that she was like a phantom. The instrument beside her showed her heart rate and blood pressure. Li Guangtu glanced at it and laughed at himself. His smile seemed to be distorted because of the pain, and he looked a little crazy. Li Shi. This was the woman he had once loved deeply, but she had ruined everything for him. Li Guangtu never dreamed that the first person he saw after he woke up from serious injuries would be Li Shi. Li Guangtu's eyes gradually became indifferent. He stared at Li Shi indifferently, and his eyes were full of disgust. Even if she stood by his side in Eastern Europe. Even if she resisted the pressure of Kunlun City in Eastern Europe to draw a sword for him. But she betrayed him. The wife of the governor of Kunlun City, Li Guangtu smiled again. How beautiful a woman was. However, the disgust in his eyes became clearer and clearer. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. He felt a little sick. There was the sound of the door being pushed open. With light footsteps, Qin Weibai walked into the ward with Saint. Li Guangtu shifted his gaze. The disgust in his eyes quickly faded. But Qin Weibai was still keenly aware of his emotions. The smile on her face instantly froze, and her heart sank at the same time. She stood there, looking extremely awkward. Where am I? Li Guangtu asked directly. Because fresh blood flowed down his body. At this moment, he was completely awake. Even though he was extremely weak, his every move still carried an extremely obvious offensive nature. Yuzhou. Qin Weibai said nothing. It was the saint who answered him. Li Guangtu raised his eyebrows for a moment and sneered. The capital of Zhongzhou State. Why? I'm a traitor now in Yuzhou. Why didn't anyone catch me and bring me back for trial? I'm awake now. Why are you here instead of the elites of Kunlun City? Saint was silent. Qin Weibai was silent. Li Guangtu's smile became more and more obvious and mocking. Oh, I forgot that the hostess of Kunlun City is here now. Why? Is Zhongzhou State going to let her take me back? Now I wake up earlier than her. Is Zhongzhou State very disappointed? Do you hate her? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Now Li Guangtu was obviously a little emotional, but everything he showed in an emotional state was closer to his true mind. Li Guangtu froze for a moment. He looked at Qin Weibai in surprise. He didn't know what his awakening meant for the time being. But in the situation in Eastern Europe, he could still live, which was enough to show that there was a problem in the Wang family of Beihai, even a big problem. What problem was more important than Wang Tianzong's own state? After a little speculation, Li Guangtu could roughly know Wang Tianzong's current state. The Wang family of Beihai was unstable internally. It was not difficult to guess what attitude Zhongzhou State would have. There were more and more rumors in Zhongzhou State now. But really, how could it be a rumor? Beihai was too strong. Zhongzhou State would definitely take action when it found the right time. It was impossible for Li Guangtu not to think of this. He woke up at this time, and there were too many things to say to Qin Weibai. If he was willing to cooperate, the purgatory of heaven capital could play an unexpected role. But now, standing in front of him, Qin Weibai's first sentence was to ask him if he hated Li Shi. Was this an important question? This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Li Guangtu was at a loss for a moment, and then shook his head. I hated her, but I don't hate her now. He was telling the truth. He had loved and hated this woman. But now this kind of extreme emotion would no longer exist. He just felt that Li Shi was disgusting, really disgusting. Is it because of that sword stroke? Qin Weibai asked seriously, but if you want to hate her, it shouldn't have started at that time, right? Li Guangtu was inexplicable. He couldn't figure out why Qin Weibai was entangled in this topic. But he had just woken up and had not recovered from his serious injury, so he was a little relaxed. Why do you say that? I know the battle that year, Qin Weibai said. I even know the list of masters who participated in the battle that year. In the face of that kind of siege, no matter how you look at it, you will lose without a doubt. In the end, you will not have the possibility of winning. But if you are in a stalemate in the end, you may not die, but Li Shi's sword ended everything for you. Qin Weibai looked into his eyes. She was very serious, but with a trace of tension. I have simulated that battle many times. Different environments, different moves, and different situations tell me that at the moment when Li Shi pierced your heart with the long sword, if you wanted to take action, it was absolutely possible to kill Li Shi at that moment. But you didn't do that. Why? Li Guangtu's brows furrowed more tightly. I can't do it. He was expressionless and said in a cold voice. It's impossible that you can't do it. Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu very seriously. You can't bear to, right? Even at that time, you can't bear to kill her. Li Guangtu looked at Qin Weibai coldly and did not speak. Do you regret it? Qin Weibai continued to ask, or, have you ever regretted it? In the almost suffocating silence, Li Guangtu suddenly smiled. What do you think? Saint took a step forward and seemed to want to pull Qin Weibai away. Qin Weibai suddenly waved her hand to let Saint step back. She looked at Li Guangtu closely and said word by word, I don't know. She really didn't know. But this was her obsession. I don't regret it. Li Guangtu said faintly, this is the thing I regret the most in my life. He looked at Li Shi. Such a disgusting woman, I couldn't bear to kill her at that time. Oh, I should have smashed her into pieces at that time. He looked at the unconscious Li Shi, and his eyes became colder. Qin Weibai seemed to have lost all her strength in an instant, and her face suddenly became as pale as paper. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 674. Disgust was a very common emotion. But when a person hated something he had liked or even loved deeply, to some extent, it was equivalent to denying everything he had liked before. Those pursuits, those passions, those affections, everything was completely denied, and it was cold and cruel. This was different from hatred. Qin Weibai actually hoped that Li Guangtu had some hatred for Li Shi, because it meant that he still hadn't let go of the past that he had protected and devoted himself to. The so-called hatred was nothing more than being unable to accept it. But in Li Guangtu's eyes and tone, she really didn't see any hatred. There was only indifference and disgust. Have you ever thought that maybe she had no choice but to do what she did back then? Maybe she was coerced by someone? Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and was silent for a long time before she asked tentatively. At this moment, she was really not strong at all. She even looked a little delicate and pitiful. For example, her father at that time, Qin Weibai said softly, "And her and your child." Li Guangtu looked at her silently. There was no emotion in his eyes. In the extremely perturbed waiting, he felt the blood flowing through his body and finally gave his answer. Do I need to know? The simplest rhetorical question. But Qin Weibai froze there for a long time. At that time, I was already dead. Li Guangtu smiled and talked about the sword in that year, and his tone didn't even have the disgust he had just shown. She may have been involuntarily, but at that time, her sword pierced my chest. I was already dead. Does a dead person need to know these things? Even if she has many explanations, which are inspiring and sad, what's the use? I'm already dead. After she killed me, would she say to my corpse that she was involuntarily and then hope that the dead person would forgive her? Some things couldn't be explained. Qin Weibai finally understood why Li Shi was always silent when Li Shi and Li Guangtu met more than once many years later. Even in Eastern Europe, when she stood beside Li Guangtu and faced Wang Tianzong. She had no choice. She was coerced. She couldn't help it. But everything was her own position. In fact, she killed Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu could come back to life. This was his ability, and it had nothing to do with Li Shi. No one understood what she had endured in her heart. No one could understand what was going through Li Guangtu's mind when her sword pierced through his heart. So many years. So many grievances, Qin Weibai muttered to herself. I didn't give it to you. Li Guangtu said indifferently, I don't owe her anything. Even if I did, I've paid it off back then. You're right, I could have killed her back then. But I can't bear to. Regret is a matter for the future. She betrayed me back then, but I spared her life. Haven't I paid her back? It's her own choice to suffer all these years of grievance. If she really doesn't want to suffer, Li Guangtu smiled and glanced at Li Shi, who was still unconscious. Why doesn't she die? But she helped you in Eastern Europe. Qin Weibai said. The moonlight shone on her face. Her face was so pale that it was almost transparent. I am very grateful to myself. Li Guangtu nodded, she can help me because I didn't kill her back then. She owes me the life I gave her. Do you expect me to forgive her just because of that? Qin Weibai's body shook slightly. Her brain was in a mess, and everything was blank. Her hands were clenched into fists, and her nails had pierced into her palms. Blood dripped down her palms and dripped on the floor. Li Guangtu suddenly raised his eyebrows. Saint, who was standing closely behind Qin Weibai, suddenly raised his head. The majestic sword intent instantly filled every corner of the ward. The ward was quiet, not a sound could be heard. Saint was silent for a long time before he calmly said, Boss, this question is meaningless. You seem to care about this question? Li Guangtu looked at Qin Weibai with some playfulness and said thoughtfully, "Why?" Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and did not speak. "What do you want from me?" Li Guangtu did not seem to be obsessed with the answer. His voice returned to indifference, and there was even a trace of killing intent in his eyes. "Have you ever thought?" Qin Weibai's voice trembled a little, but she still continued the original topic. She actually had a lot of things to say here. The identity of Li Guangtu meant too many things. In the next general trend, if used well, he was definitely the most important figure. The cooperation between the Samsara Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, the Li family and the Samsara Palace, the Emperor East Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, Tiannan, and even the Wang family of Beihai. As long as the two sides could cooperate, there were too many things that could be done. However, the question about Li Shi obviously interfered with Qin Weibai's thinking. Her heart was in a mess. In such a state, it was obviously not suitable to talk about any cooperation with Li Guangtu. She pointed at Li Shi with her blood-stained fingers. She has had a bad life these years. Who will understand her situation and everything she has endured? The blood dripped on the ground. Li Guangtu was silent for a moment and said faintly, "No one understands." "Are you saying that she deserves all of this?" Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and asked. Li Guangtu was expressionless and did not speak for a long time. Qin Weibai stood up and looked at Li Shi. Her eyes flashed with countless complex emotions. Li Shi lay quietly. For so many years, it seemed that it was the first time that she had slept so peacefully. "I can understand her." Qin Weibai was silent for a long time before she said softly. Li Guangtu was not wrong. Li Shi was also not wrong. In the most unfeeling world, there were always some people who lived the most affectionate. She could understand everything about her. "If you want, I can change a ward for her." Qin Weibai turned around and looked at Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu nodded expressionlessly without any hesitation. Qin Weibai stood in front of Li Shi for a long time before she turned and left. Saint looked back at Li Guangtu, did not speak, and closed the door of the ward. The moonlight shone down softly. The whole room was cold. Li Guangtu was silent for a long time alone, and suddenly said, "When do you want to see it?" "Why, when your woman and your subordinates are here, do you have any concerns that you can't say?" Li Shi was still asleep. The moonlight gently fluctuated in the dark corner that could not be found. A figure came out of the darkness and became clearer and clearer. "I just don't think our next negotiation should be heard by anyone." Li Tianlan stood in front of Li Guangtu and said calmly, "You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."